Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha Massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. Oh. Kuro didn't comment, but when she mentioned Gawain, he couldn't help but show some worry on his face. The battle in the harbor has stopped for a long time. Don't die in such a place. Bang. The door of the Lord's mansion was pushed open, and Gawain, carrying Jin, appeared in front of everyone. Are you so eager to inherit my position? Chapter 35, Where is the Justice of the Marines? Kuro raised his eyebrows, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I knew you would survive, but what happened to him? Looking at Jin on Gawain's shoulder, Kuro frowned slightly. He still hadn't recovered from the danger of that battle. Especially the determination shown by Jin to risk everything for victory, even Kuro couldn't help but feel in awe. If Kuro's mentality had not sublimated during the battle, the outcome of the battle would have been hard to predict. You should know his identity. Even the enemy has to rescue him. Gawain, being too merciful will not allow you to enter the Grand Line or even the New World. Gawain gently put Jin down and called the ship's doctor to treat Jin's injuries and the toxins in his body. He then turned to Kuro and explained, he's a poor man too. Besides, no one would dislike a crew member who would stand up for his captain and exchange his life for another's even if he was abandoned. However, with injuries of this degree, whether he can survive depends on his fate. Kuro was slightly stunned and said lightly, just keep it in mind. If he still wants to avenge Krieg after he wakes up, I will deal with it myself. But you? How? Nothing. Gawain glanced at Kuro and threw a probe at him. Name, Kuro, potential, silver, rating, bronze, understand his true nature, awaken his observation haki, and make up for his shortcomings, as expected. After the sublimation of his mentality, Kuro's potential is already on par with him, and his combat power is directly increased to the bronze level due to the awakening of his observation haki. Once his injuries are healed, his combat power will directly increase by 1 level. No wonder this kid has the word inflation written all over his face. Otherwise, who would come up and speak to their captain in this tone in front of everyone? Gawain sneered in his heart. It doesn't matter. After this, he would be fine after a few beatings. And he can't just distance the gap to the point where he loses hope. Otherwise, it will be difficult if he just gives up and lies flat. Thinking of this, Gawain had an idea in his mind. He put Kuro's matter aside for the time being and turned to look at Gaza. The Marines' fleet is coming in, Just as Gawain opened his mouth, he heard hurried footsteps outside the Lord's mansion. The Marines led by Smoker are on their way here, and even before they get close, there is already a sense of oppression, as if a storm is about to come. The guard at the door came in hurriedly and reported in a panic, My lord, the Marines have surrounded this place with their men. The leader is a white-haired man who looks like someone who is not easy to mess with. What should we do? Gaza frowned upon hearing this. Logically, this kind of thing shouldn't happen. They dared to do it even without a search warrant, right? Jasmine looked at Gawain and the others with a serious expression. My lord, we have to be on guard. If they really try to force their way in, Don't panic, I'll go take a look. After patting Jasmine's shoulder and nodding to Gawain, she led Jasmine towards the door. Gawain interrupted Gaza's actions. That guy did something rather outrageous. To prevent him from attacking you directly, it's safer for me to follow you. Gawain was well aware of Smoker's style. It is simply impossible to expect a person who dares to yell at his immediate superior and even directly refuses to attend the promotion ceremony to abide by the internal rules and regulations of the Marines. Once he really takes control of Gaza, his side will be completely passive. Okay. Gaza nodded and asked Gawain to put on the guard's armor and helmet to cover his face. Gawain then handed Guan's Masamune to Kuro, and after picking up a long sword at random, he followed her out. Squeak. The door of the Lord's mansion was pushed open. Smoker's slightly ferocious face appeared directly in front of Gaza. Standing behind him was a row of Marines armed with live ammunition, all of them with alert looks on their faces, exuding an invisible sense of oppression. Gaza swallowed subconsciously upon seeing this. Sir, how can I help you? Smoker said expressionlessly, We are tracking down a group of pirates. We have already searched the entire city. This is the only place left. There won't be any pirates here. Gaza shook her head. You can look somewhere else. Smoker frowned. They had searched every place on the island, but there was no sign of the White Knight pirate. It is impossible for a pirate group of dozens or hundreds of people to disappear out of thin air. In addition to Gaz's attitude at the moment, he is almost certain that the members of the White Knight pirate group are hiding in the city lord's mansion. The attitude is getting worse. Please don't make it hard for me. Whoosh. The Marines raised their guns in response. Surrounded by the black muzzles of guns, Gaza calmed down and looked at Smoker coldly. So the justice of the Marines is to flee when facing pirates and turn around and point the guns at civilians, right? Or have you been tired of making money in the name of building a branch base for so many years? Smoker was speechless for a moment and cursed the Marine scum in his heart, but still said with a stiff face, I will report the previous events to the headquarters separately. I will also deal with those who asked you for money one by one. But now, you'd better know what you are doing and the price you need to pay for it, otherwise. Smoker slowly took off the weapon behind him, his eyes cold and stern. Don't blame me for using force. Along with his words, there was a fierce aura emanating from Smoker's body, pressing down on everyone like a mountain. Gaza, who was in the center of Smoker's sight, got goosebumps all over her body. She felt her legs go weak, and she was about to fall backward. But suddenly, she felt the large hand pressing down on her shoulder, and the aura that had been pressing on her like a mountain disappeared in an instant. Gawain took a step forward, protected Gaza behind him, and said coldly, Do you know what you are doing? Even the Marines cannot break into the mansion of an affiliated country of the world government without a search warrant. This is a decision made after the Marines and the world government reached an agreement. Are you going to disobey? If necessary. Smoker's tone was firm, and there was no hesitation in his eyes. As time passed, he became more convinced of his initial judgment. Once White Knight Gawain successfully escaped here, it would become increasingly difficult to capture him later. Even if I lose this outfit, as long as I can catch that guy, my trip will not be in vain. And, looking at the guard in front of him, Smoker frowned slightly. Just because of the aura that the other party had just released unintentionally, he felt extreme danger. If there really is such a thing in this harbor, how could it be so easy for Krieg's people to invade? Or, who are you? Gawain quietly tightened his grip on the sword in his hand, ready to fight here. Gaza spoke first, just a guard in the Lord's mansion. It is impossible for the guards of the Lord's mansion to have such a look. Smoker said in a cold voice, Who on earth are you? But at this moment, a small stone entered Smoker's sight from the side. He crushed it with one hand and turned around to see a girl with tears in her eyes and countless harbor residents with angry faces. Chapter 36, Their acting is really bad, get out of here. Bad Marines. The little girl tried her best to show a ferocious expression, but with her rosy face, she looked unusually well behaved and cute. But at this moment, Smoker couldn't laugh at all. He ignored the little girl and looked behind him. More and more civilians gathered here, surrounding the Marines. These people had angry looks on their faces, and in their hands were holding farm tools, brooms, benches, sticks, or other objects that could barely be considered weapons made from local materials. Even when facing these people from the Marines, there was no fear on their faces, only resentment that had been pent up for a long time. Get out of here, Marines. You would only run away when facing pirates, but now that the incident is over, you guys are here? This kind of justice. This kind of justice. In front of the crowd, a young man with a broken arm clenched his fist until the blood dyed the bandage red. The pain made his expression more ferocious, and his voice was like that of a wounded beast. We don't need it. The branch base you promised, the harbor you promised. None of it has been realized. Everything was just for money. Now that the pirates' attack has just passed, are you so impatient? Hearing the shouts of the civilians around him, Smoker's face was as gloomy as water. He could naturally see that the real purpose of these people was to protect the pirates hidden in the Lord's mansion. But no matter what he did, he couldn't understand why these civilians would stand on the side of the pirates. Ignoring the angry civilians, Smoker turned to look at Gaza and Gawain, his brows furrowed tightly. You guys played this trick beautifully. After saying that, Smoker raised his hand and asked the surrounding Marines to put down their weapons. He could not bring himself to do this to the civilians who had just suffered, especially when part of that suffering came from the Marines. Gaza looks around. She felt a warmth in the eyes of these civilians. At this moment, the aura from Smoker that made her legs weak just now was not so unbearable. She took a deep breath and said calmly, We didn't do anything, they came here of their own accord. Sir, if you don't have a search warrant, please go back. HMMPP. Smoker snorted, his eyes fixed on the guard next to Gaza. The only person in East Blue who could make him feel the dangerous aura was Gawain, the one he fought tonight. If he was just surprised just now he was sure that the servant standing in front of him was Gawain in disguise. Does he really want to let a pirate escape in front of him? Still, Smoker clenched his weapon, his expression uncertain. Captain Smoker. Suddenly, Tashigi hurriedly squeezed in from the outside of the crowd, walked quickly to Smoker's side, and said, "We have basically figured out what happened in Raven Harbor yesterday. There were 3 warships that arrived here. After Captain Nezumi saw through White Knight Gawain's identity, he fled on his ship. The other one pretended to be Marines were Admiral Krieg's men. This was their specialty, but they were all destroyed. As for the last group of people..." Having said that, Tashigi looked at Gaza in the distance with a strange expression and continued, "That is, the Marines that rescued the civilians in the harbor should be the White Knight Gawain's men pretending to be Marines." "Pirates?" Smoker was slightly stunned. "That's right." Tashigi nodded. "If there is no 4th party involved, this would be the case." "We are the 4th party." Smoker sighed. He already understood why these civilians were risking their lives to stand before him. It's because the civilians of this era are much simpler than you can imagine. If you are good to them, they will be good to you. If you stand up for them, they will be willing to stand in front of the Marines for you. At this moment, in the eyes of the civilians in Raven Harbor, those pirates who ran through the gunfire and snatched themselves back from the hands of death with their own hands are far more worthy of respect than the Marines. For a while, Smoker had mixed feelings in his heart. Although he was a little unwilling, he finally waved his hand. "Let's go get a search warrant." "Understood." Tashigi saluted, her eyes falling on Smoker, slightly distracted. She doesn't know if it's an illusion. She always felt like Smoker was being pressed down by something at this moment, making his back not as dull as before. The surrounding civilians made way for Smoker and the Marines to leave. It was not until the Marines completely disappeared and the warships remaining in the harbor sounded their whistles that everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Many people's clothes were soaked with sweat. "I was scared to death. I thought we were going to fight the Marines here. With the weapons we have, we can scare people, but if we really fight the Marines, we will be shot in line. But wasn't that Marines officer also scared away by us?" Hee hee. The crowd gradually became noisy. But no one regretted coming here today to protect their savior. The young man with the broken arm came to his senses at this moment, looked at his bloody arm, and grimaced in pain. Then he smiled faintly at Gaza. "My lord, thanks to you this time, we were able to survive." Gaza has a bleak outlook, so many people died in the end. "If I had discovered it earlier, if we had been stronger." "You've done a great job." The young man with the broken arm consoled her, then he remembered something and said jokingly, "Also, please let us give a message to our benefactors." "What?" The young man with the broken arm grinned. "Their acting is really bad. How could the Marines disregard their own safety and risk their lives to save us? Next time, you can wear your own clothes and even carry your own flag." As they spoke, everyone's eyes were focused on Gaza. It was obvious that this was a decision they had already discussed. Gawain looked at the smiles on everyone's faces, and he felt something inexplicably on him. Far away, Smoker stood on the deck, looked up at the Lord's mansion in the distance, and murmured, "White Knight Gawain, what kind of man are you?" No one answered Smoker's words. Tashigi stood quietly beside Smoker, holding in her hand an anashaku jit that she had just fished out of the sea. After a while, Smoker came back to his senses and looked towards the sea in the distance. The confusion in his eyes gradually dissipated. There may be 1 or 2 outliers among the pirates, but the pirates themselves are the source of the chaos in this world. "Tashigi." "Yes." "You know what? I have submitted reports about Nezumi to the headquarters several times before, but each time, they fell on deaf ears. The most recent time, I even received a warning from a certain rear admiral." Tashigi's breath caught in her throat, and she quietly tightened her grip on the sword in her hand. Smoker continued, "If I can be stronger and have a higher status, I can change the status quo of the East Blue Marines and even the Grand Line. We are too weak, not only in strength but also in influence." Chapter 37, The Sea is My Grave. A few days later. At the edge of Raven Harbor, at the foot of a mountain, tombstones of the dead are scattered all over the ground, most of which were recently added. This was because too many civilians and harbor guards died in this battle. From time to time, soft sobbing sounds could be heard all around as civilians came here one after another to mourn their deceased family and friends. In the corner, Gawain personally erected a tombstone engraved with the names of his subordinates who died in the battle, and the tombstone faced the direction of the Grand Line. Gawain's eyes swept across the names carved on the tombstones, and he murmured, "Just watch from here. No, we will plant our flag in every corner of the world. When everyone starts to spread the name of the White Knight Pirate, you will also live forever with this name." After saying that, Gawain turned around and found that Kuro and his men were standing at the entrance of the cemetery, their eyes fixed on him. "That's a pretty nice thing to say." With a smile on his face, Kuro adjusted his glasses with his palm and said calmly, "It's time to go, Captain." "Ah." Gawain smiled faintly. Everyone followed Gawain, walking hurriedly towards the harbor. A cargo ship over 100 meters in length, loaded with food, ammunition, and medical supplies, was quietly anchored in the harbor. The food here is enough for Gawain and others to eat for several months, and the arms and ammunition are enough to support 10 fierce battles. As long as it is transported back to the base on Pala Island, Gawain won't have to worry about supplies for a long time. What's more, Gaza has promised that a covert route will be established to provide Gawain with stable logistical supplies. When Gaza saw Gawain coming, her eyes lit up. "Mr. Gawain, please remember the promise we made to each other." Gawain nodded. "When I return, I will dispatch my subordinates to begin clearing out the pirates occupying the main shipping lanes around Raven Harbor." After saying that, Gawain jumped onto the deck, and Kuro also walked slowly into the cabin with his men. After carefully checking the situation inside the ship and confirming that everything was correct, the freighter sounded the whistle and slowly sailed out of the harbor. Gaza looked at the figure standing on the deck, her eyes slightly reddened, and he couldn't suppress the emotions in her heart. "After all, Mr. Gawain, when can we meet again?" Gawain was slightly stunned, then waved his hand with his back to Gaza. "If all goes well, you will see news about me in the newspaper soon." "What if it doesn't go well?" "That sea is my grave." Gaza pursed her lips and tried very hard to prevent her tears from falling. She knew that the East Blue would not be Gawain's limit. This man was like an eagle and would never stay here. He is destined to go to a bigger stage and let the world spread his name. What an unromantic man. But are pirates such handsome beings? Jasmine was stunned, and a sense of uneasiness inexplicably arose in her heart. "My lord, you still have this harbor and the people here." Gaza raised her hand to wipe the tears from her eyes and said firmly, "I know. But I also need enough strength to protect my people. I heard that there is something called a devil fruit on the Grand Line. If I eat it, I can gain great power. Maybe. My lord, do you want to be a landlubber? These are but small costs compared to the great power. The sea is unpredictable. Even in the relatively peaceful East Blue, a storm that could strike at any time is enough to capsize most ships." The wind was blowing violently, and lightning was flashing. Amid the rising waves, a cargo ship was rising and falling with the waves, and there was a danger of being submerged. "Hurry! Turn the rudder. There's a whirlpool ahead. If we get stuck in it, we'll all die." Kuro stood on the deck, directing the ship. Gawain even directly sent out flying slash, cutting through the huge waves coming from afar to ensure that the ship would not capsize due to the impact of the huge waves. The howling storm made Gawain realize for the first time the cruelty of the sea. At least for the lower-level pirates, the unpredictable weather is the #1 cause of death, and combat is only second. Damn it. Kuro, you've been at sea for so many years, how come your seamanship level is about the same as mine? There used to be a special navigator on board. Where are the people? That's the one who was burned to death in Raven Harbor before. You're a piece of shit. The corner of Kuro's mouth twitched noticeably, and just as he was about to open his mouth to refute, another huge wave came from the distance. It carried an overwhelming force that threatened to engulf everything in front of it. The air pressure alone made the freighter creak. Gawain. I know. Gawain's face was stern. He raised his hand and slashed several times in the air, barely breaking the incoming huge waves. But the sea in the distance is becoming more and more turbulent. A few hours later, the ship gradually sailed out of that crazy sea area. The wind and waves gradually subsided, and even sunlight shone through the clouds onto everyone, dispelling the chill of the seawater. Those who managed to survive collapsed on the deck and gasped for breath. Gawain looked at the level 1 navigation skills on his panel, then looked at Kuro in the distance, who had a pale face and was being rebandaged with a ruptured wound. It was a pain in the ass to think that the latter's navigation skills were about the same as his. Before entering the Grand Line, I must first find a reliable navigator. When Gawain thought of the storm just now, he felt a pang of fear. Don't just say something cool the day before yesterday and then die in the sea today, that would be funny. But at this moment, a figure wrapped in bandages slowly pushed open the door of the cabin and limped out. Where am I? Jin, who had just woken up, looked at everything around him blankly. It was not until he saw Kuro's face that he remembered what had happened before. Kuro? You saved me? Kuro pointed at Gawain expressionlessly and said coldly, It's him. White Knight Gawain? Jin was slightly stunned, and then he recalled what had happened. Recalling the scene where Krieg throws himself at Gawain and shoots him without hesitation, he, even with his heart full of loyalty, couldn't help but feel suffocated. Why? I also want a subordinate who can protect the captain from a knife at a critical moment. Gawain held out his hand. Would you like to come to my boat? I may not be a good captain, But at least I won't fire at my own people, nor will I swing a knife at my subordinates for no reason." Jin smiled bitterly. What kind of friendship and loyalty do pirates have? They are just lies. Before he could finish his words, Jin's eyes went dark, and he fell down. Chapter 38, Captain, another one. It was already night when Jin woke up again. Outside the porthole, a full moon had just risen from the sea, and the grayish-white moonlight fell on the sea, reflecting a silver-like brilliance along with the ups and downs of the waves. Jin struggled to stand up and found himself in a cabin. Beneath him was a warm and soft blanket that did not become wet even in the sea, and the bandages on his body that were wet from his movements during the day had been replaced with new ones. He slowly sat up from the bed, thoughts surging in his mind, remembering what happened in the harbor a few days ago. Pearl's reminder, Krieg's abandonment without hesitation, the questioning and wailing of those brothers before their death. These things can destroy a person's will far more than physical pain. Even though he had the title of a demon and was extremely cold-blooded when facing his enemies, he still couldn't help but feel the chill in his bones at this moment. Even though there was a burning stove in the room and the cabin windows were tightly closed to prevent any sea breeze from blowing in, Jin subconsciously still wrapped himself tightly in the quilt. Loyalty. Jin's mouth curled up into a self-deprecating smile. Oh! Betrayal is the real deal among pirates. Squeak. The door of the room was pushed open at this moment. Jin turned around and saw Gawain walking in with a bowl of fried rice in his hand. He said calmly, "The cook on board was injured, so I prepared some food myself. You can try it. After all, only when you are full can you have the energy to do other things." Gawain put the fried rice on Jin's bedside and waved at him. Jin was slightly stunned. From Gawain, Jin sensed an aura that was completely different from Krieg's. Although Gawain possessed greater power, his aura was extremely peaceful. It is completely different from Krieg's brutal and tyrannical aura. He had never seen such aura from a pirate before. Jin looked at the steaming fried rice on the bow, then turned to look at Gawain. "Why did you save me? I am short of people. You are the talent I need, both in character and strength." Gawain looked at Jin, not hiding his admiration. As early as the day the ship set sail, he threw a probe at Jin. As expected, in that battle, it was not only Kuro who awakened the observation haki but also Jin in front of him. Although Jin's potential is still at bronze level, after awakening his observation haki, it is already the closest to silver. Later, as long as there is a sublimation in mind or the devil fruit is eaten, the potential will definitely be able to be upgraded to the silver level, which can basically be regarded as a long-term experience package like Kuro. What's more, Jin possesses the most valuable quality among pirates, loyalty. This is not difficult to see from the battle at the Raven Harbor. After all, when Krieg launched an artillery attack without caring about Jin, who was in the harbor, the seriously injured Jin was still willing to exchange his life for Krieg's chance of survival. "Hey, Jin, do you remember the last thing he said to you?" Jin's eyes darkened. "Of course," he said, "don't get on my boat in your next life. So what you owe him has been paid." Gawain continued, "You are free now, and you have the power to choose where you want to go. If you wish, I could reserve the position of captain to you until this ship arrives at the harbor." Looking at the lonely man in front of him, Gawain threw away his original idea of forcing the other person on the boat in exchange for saving his life. After all, if he really did that, he would be no different from Krieg. Jin looked at the fried rice placed on the bedside table and remained silent. Seeing this, Gawain sighed inwardly, then stood up and walked out of the room. "You should rest well." Squeak. Gawain closed the door and was about to leave. When he turned around, he found Kuro standing in the cabin, looking at him with a faint smile on his lips. Seeing Gawain walk out expressionlessly, Kuro guessed what happened in the room, and the smile on his face became even bigger. "Did he really give you a cold shoulder? Once that kind of stubborn guy makes up his mind to follow a captain, he will not hesitate to sacrifice his life. I feel this more deeply than you do. After all, it was me who fought that guy." Kuro raised his hand and touched his chest, feeling the pain from the wound. The smile on his face gradually faded, and his eyes became sharper. "There are only wrong names, but no wrong nicknames. Demons are not only cold-blooded towards their enemies but also towards themselves. In order to win, they will not hesitate even at the risk of their own lives. How could such a person be swayed just by your kindness?" Kuro raised his hand and pushed up his glasses, his whole body exuding a sharp aura. "Do you need my help with that? Although my wounds haven't healed yet, I'm different now. Even you." "Oh." Gawain looked at the bandages on Kuro's body. "You are seriously injured, so I am not interested in you. When you recover, I will wait for you to take over the position of captain. But the loser can't cry." "Ah." Kuro spread his hands and said helplessly, "You've always been like this, as if everything is just that in your eyes. This kind of deeply hidden arrogance is really infuriating." Snort. Gawain smiled faintly. The two of them were about to turn around and leave when Jin's voice came from the room. Captain, another one. After hearing this, Gawain was slightly stunned, then the corners of his mouth gradually curled up. You really think of me as a cook? How did you do that? Kuro's pupil shrank. What happened before his eyes was beyond his expectations. I made him some fried rice. Kuro was puzzled. That's it? That's it. Gawain patted Kuro on the shoulder. It takes more than just strength to be a good captain. Hey, when I was out at sea, you were busy flirting with the princess in the kingdom of Goa. Could you please not bring this up? Then tell me the truth, what did you say to Jin? How could such a stubborn guy give in so easily? Kuro was puzzled. Especially when seeing the faint smile on Gawain's face. He felt despised. Some things cannot be considered simply from the perspective of gains and losses. People are all made of flesh and blood. Even if it's a demon, it's the same. Pala Island, in a small harbor. In addition to several small pirate ships anchored in the harbor, there is also a series of wooden houses built along the harbor, most of which show signs of decay. It is obvious that Kuro's base here has existed for many years. At this moment, in the center of the harbor, dozens of pirates were gathered around a bonfire. The firelight shone on their faces, making them look even paler. Django looked expressionlessly at the two pirates who had stayed on the island for a long time and asked, just two female thieves stole all the treasures that Captain Kuro, no, the deputy captain, had stored for so many years? That's right. The two pirates who stayed in the harbor nodded repeatedly. I remember what they looked like. They were about 15 or 16 years old. One had short orange hair, and the other had short purple hair. To be honest, although they are a little young, they have a great figure. As he said this, the pirate gave a thumbs up. Bang! Django slapped the pirate on the head in anger, knocking him to the ground, and said solemnly, the question now is, how do I explain this to the captain? Even with Captain Gawain's style, I'm afraid he would kill you with a single blow. Chapter 39, Hawkeye's East Blue. Logetown, Central Harbor. After Smoker arrested all the troublemakers with lightning speed, he wiped the sweat from his face, sat aside, and checked the latest newspaper. The scene he saw in Raven Harbor half a month ago emerged in his mind. In order to help the pirates, the civilians attacked the Marines. Such a thing has never happened in East Blue, let alone anywhere in the world. The person at the center of the incident, Gawain, who was known as the White Knight, was like a nightmare lingering in Smoker's mind. Who are you? You're clearly a pirate, but you're taking action for the local civilians without any benefit. There is no such pirate in this world. Smoker took a deep drag on the cigar in his mouth, and the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. He simply stopped thinking about it and turned to ask other questions. Still no reply to Nezumi's report letter? Dashigi gritted her teeth and shook her head. No. I even felt that the letter had not even been sent out of the East Blue and had been intercepted by someone. Captain Smoker, this is absolutely wrong. How could the Marines tolerate Nezumi's existence? This is a blasphemy against justice. Oh. Smoker's mouth curled up with a hint of sarcasm. For some people, money and status are justice. I also asked people to investigate the money-making scam in Raven Harbor, but the clues were cut off as soon as they reached a certain rear admiral. Even the people I sent out were detained. There must be someone else behind this. If we want to solve it thoroughly, we have to contact the Marine Bureau of Investigation. But according to their rules, we both have to be investigated as well. This. Dashigi looked at Smoker silently, and the latter blushed. Once I take over, I will dismantle this evil department sooner or later. Family members know their own business. Smoker has done some things that violate the rules but not against his own conscience. Once it is discovered, it will cause a lot of trouble. Dashigi quietly changed the subject. However, regarding the news about White Knight Gawain, the headquarters has responded. Gawain's bounty will be raised again. Smoker nodded, not surprised by this. In just over a month, the bounty has increased twice. This is the first time in history that this has happened. Dashigi. Yes. My premonition is getting stronger. If we let that guy enter the Grand Line this time, a great pirate will appear. Smoker gritted his teeth. We must catch him while he's in the East Blue. Even if it costs our lives. Yes. The two fell silent at the same time. In the distant sky, a few news crews flew by, dropped a newspaper, and then flapped their wings and flew away. Smoker raised his hand to pick up the newspaper on the ground. After opening it, he saw a familiar face, White Knight Gawain, bounty. This number appeared in the East Blue. Vice Admiral Garp may not be able to sit still. How much? 85 million belly. New World. On a deserted island, the Red Force was anchored in a bay. The skull and crossbones flag printed on the sail was extremely conspicuous. Even at a distance of dozens of miles, it could be seen clearly, causing pirates lurking nearby to flee. This is because this skull flag represents the youngest of the 4 emperors of the New World, and he is also the undisputed #1 in terms of hockey on the sea today. Red hair, Shanks. He once had the hope of competing with Hawkeyes for the title of #1 swordsman, but all that came to an end when Shanks left his arm in the East Blue, at the beach now. The light and shadows and the rising fire flickered, shining on everyone's faces. Fragrant barbecue, colorful fruits, and countless fine wines and delicacies were placed together in a mess. The strong smell of wine in the air could not be blown away by the sea breeze. Really? You guys have been drinking since 3 days ago. There should be a limit. As Beckman was speaking, Shanks held him down. Seeing this, everyone rushed forward and pinned Beckman down, then poured a whole pitcher of beer into his mouth. Ha 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 ha. Everyone burst into laughter, and when Beckman managed to break free, his face smelled of alcohol. Asshole, none of the people who poured water on me just now can escape. Ha 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 ha. Shanks clapped his thigh and laughed, but his expression froze the next moment. Because on the sea in the distance, a pirate ship that was barely made of a few logs spliced together, so simple that it could not even be called a ship, was carrying a familiar flag and was slowly sailing towards the deserted island under the breeze, and the man sitting on this boat was one that Shanks was very familiar with. The undisguised sharp aura from the opponent was accompanied by an absolute confidence that he was the best in the world. He is the insurmountable peak of swordsmanship in this era, the opponent that all swordsmen dream of defeating. The world's #1 swordsman. Hawkeyes. Hey, Mick here. Hawkeyes was slightly startled, but after recognizing Shanks, he docked the boat at the shore. Without waiting for Hawkeyes to come closer, Shanks stuffed a bottle of beer into Hawkeye's hand, put one hand on his shoulder, and urged, "Drink quickly. Drink quickly." Hawkeyes frowned slightly and looked at Shanks. "You were also drinking yesterday, weren't you? This is a party." At this time, Lucky Roo, Yusuf, and others on the side also started to make a noise. Seeing this, Hawkeyes had no choice but to drink up the beer in the glass. With Hawkeyes' entry, the banquet reached its climax again and lasted until late at night. At this moment, everyone except Red Hair, Hawkeyes, and Beckman was drunk and fell to the ground. Snoring sounds could be heard from all around from time to time. Hawkeyes didn't look drunk at all. He took out a bounty order from his pocket and put it in Shanks's hand. An interesting pirate appeared in the East Blue. Luffy? Shanks became interested, but when he looked down and saw a strange face on the bounty poster, he immediately lost interest. Hawkeyes didn't care about this and continued, "White Knight Gawain, reward 48 million. From the look in his eyes, I can tell that he is a swordsman. A swordsman who has absolute confidence in himself, even to the point of being arrogant. I don't know where this confidence comes from, but maybe it will bear satisfying fruit." Hawkeyes looked at Shanks's broken arm. "Ever since you lost an arm, I haven't met a suitable opponent in a long time. If you want to fight, I don't mind. You no longer interest me," Hawkeyes said calmly. Beckman, who was standing by, suddenly took the bounty order from Red Hair, took a closer look, and smiled at Hawkeyes. "Your information is outdated. The bounty on this guy has been updated." After speaking, Beckman took out the newspaper he had just received today, took out a piece of bounty from the stack, and handed it to Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes' eyes lit up slightly. 85 million belly? Interesting. I've decided. My next stop will be the East Blue. Chapter 40, The monk can escape, but the temple cannot. Pala Island. Kuro, who had just got off the boat, looked at Django and the two pirates in front of him and didn't know what expression to make for a moment. He was furious when he learned that the gold he had saved for more than 10 years was stolen overnight. So, you, dozens or even hundreds of people, were fooled by two 15 or 16-year-old female thieves? I asked you to look after the house. Is this how you look after it? Between his words, Kuro reached out and wiped his face. According to his previous personality, anyone involved in this matter would be thrown into the sea to feed the fish on the spot. I am so lucky to meet geniuses like you. Deputy Captain, we will be embarrassed if you say that. The two pirates in charge of the guard rubbed their heads shyly. You really think I'm praising you? The corner of Kuro's mouth twitched, and the weapon in his arms was unsheathed, revealing a cold and sharp light. Everyone then recalled that until more than a month ago, the man before them was still the same ruthless killer who treated his subordinates as tools. The two men in charge of guarding the house knelt down directly while shaking like sieves, without any trace of their previous incoherent look. Kuro. Gawain held Kuro's shoulders. I know. Only then did Kuro put down his weapon, but the look he gave the two pirates was still filled with undisguised murderous intent. Failure to guard properly and not even realizing the seriousness of the problem would be an unforgivable crime, no matter which pirate group it happened to. Even Gawain's expression gradually turned cold as he looked at the two of them. "Tell me the whole story from beginning to end, in detail." "Yes." Under extreme fear, both of them had trembling voices, and their speech was unclear. But Gawain still managed to piece together what happened from their mouths. Two girls, about 15 or 16 years old. One of them has short orange hair and a strange tattoo on her arm. The other has short purple hair. Two figures gradually appeared in Gawain's mind, so much so that the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. "The monk may escape, but the temple cannot. This money cannot be lost. Even if it is lost, we can get it back from others." Kuro breathed a sigh of relief, raised his hand to push up his glasses, and looked at the two pirates with a cold gaze. "Captain, what should we do with these two guys?" The two were slightly stunned and felt that Kuro was looking at them as if he were looking at a dead person, so they quickly knelt down and begged for mercy. After Gawain pondered for a moment, he glanced at the two of them and said calmly, "Lock them up first. If the money can be recovered, I will forgive them this time. If not, then I can only let them feed the fish." After saying this, Gawain ignored their cries for mercy and had them taken away and locked up. Gawain was merciful by not executing them on the spot like Kuro would have done. Because if he showed unusual tolerance in such matters, it would only make the people in the pirate group more lax and lead to more similar mistakes. There is still a chance to make amends this time, but the consequences may be fatal the next time. Therefore, even Django and the Nayab brothers did not speak to plead for the two pirates. Gawain knew this clearly. They had been pirates for many years, so they naturally knew this as well. Even Gawain's way of handling the situation was already quite merciful. Let's leave this matter at that. Gawain looked around and found that even though more than half a month had passed, the pirates present were still covered in bandages. Even though Kuro and Jin have regained their ability to move, it is still not difficult to see that their faces are pale. After a little thought, Gawain decided to rest and recuperate for a while and then set off for Kokoyasi village after the pirate group had basically recovered. Now, there's more to it than just Kuro's lost gold. More importantly, there's Nami, a top navigator who can be considered first class even in the Grand Line, and even Golden Lion is willing to take her away. If Zoro and Sanji are undoubtedly gold level in combat, then Nami's navigation skills are already close to the ceiling of this world. Gawain's mouth twitched when he thought of his and Kuro's navigation skills. Their navigation skills were really quite inferior. The climate of the East Blue was already a bit too much for him to bear. If he rashly entered the Grand Line, he would probably be defeated by weather that was so outrageous and fantastic that it could be called fantasy. Therefore, in this situation, an excellent navigator is indispensable. Since the swordsman and the cook are already in the crew I prepared, what's the harm in having one more navigator? Gawain's eyes became firm. Then his thoughts flew off. Now that Kuro's potential has been upgraded to silver, he has even recruited Jin, who has awakened his observation haki. Gawain planned to take advantage of this time to improve his combat power again in order to cope with the increasingly fierce battles in the future. At the same time, he was increasingly looking forward to how much improvement the silver-level potential crew members could bring to him. The next day, on the stone wall in the center of Pala Island, Kuro, who had barely recovered his ability to move, began to practice impatiently. Of course, the pussyfoot maneuver, which requires high-intensity physical activity, can only be put down temporarily, but the observation haki, which emphasizes perception more, is not subject to this restriction. Kuro slowly sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and sensed everything around him. The sounds of insects and birds chirping can be heard all around, and the sea breeze brings moisture that blows on the body, bringing a slight coolness. His heart, however, gradually calmed down like a pool of stagnant water. At some point, ripples appeared on the water's surface. Kuro subconsciously raised his hand and accurately caught a wasp flying from a distance. The wasp's hideous mouth parts and sharp stinger twisted restlessly in the air, and a layer of purple-black liquid flowed from its abdomen, which obviously carried some kind of toxin. Kuro opened his eyes, crushed the poisonous insect to death, then closed his eyes again, savoring the feeling just now, and muttered, "The perception of observation haki is not as direct as the five senses of the human body: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. Instead, it is more like a kind of intuition. No reason, no logic, I just know you're there. It's more of an intuition than a perception." Gawain once said that haki is a manifestation of the user's spirit. According to this logic, observation haki should be a kind of intuition of the human body to sense danger. And this intuition can be actively released through practice. Speaking of this, Kuro realized something and closed his eyes again. He sat here quietly like this until nightfall, then he slowly stood up. As he felt himself gradually becoming familiar with the use of his observation haki, there was only indescribable excitement in his eyes. "Once I have mastered the observation haki, I will be able to push the speed of the pussyfoot maneuver to a higher level. Even if it's Gawain, he won't be my opponent. As he spoke, Kuro almost saw the scene of himself defeating Gawain. Although he now wholeheartedly agrees with Gawain, who wouldn't want to be the one giving orders if possible. When my body fully recovers, that's when I'll become captain again. At the other end, just after washing up and preparing to go to bed, Gawain suddenly heard a system notification in his mind: Physique experience +8. Swordsmanship experience +7. Observation hockey experience +33. Chapter 41, Rapidly Increasing Experience Points. Gawain was slightly stunned. The numbers for swordsmanship and physique are still normal. After all, now that Kuro and Jin are seriously injured and cannot move normally, his only source of experience is the pirates in the pirate group, whose potential has not yet reached its limit. It can be as many as a dozen, which can only be said to be better than nothing, and the overall gain is even getting smaller and smaller. However, this was all within Gawain's expectations. What really surprised him was the observation hockey. There are only 2 people in the pirate group who have awakened their observation hockey. Jin is more seriously injured, so the only one left is Kuro, who has recovered faster. But Kuro can provide 33 points of experience in one day. Even now, he is injured and in poor physical condition. Once he fully recovers, he will provide more experience. Gawain opened the system panel. Host, Gawain, age, 24, identity, Captain of the White Knight Pirate, skill, swordsmanship, level 5, 1171 1600, swiftness physique, level 5, 381 1600, equilibrium navigation, level 1, 13100ths, pussyfoot maneuver, level 1, 3200, observation hockey, level 0, 33500, badge, Captain's Fury, subordinates physical strength recovery speed +20%. Rising fame, you can check the potential level of your subordinates. Rating, bronze. You are a big shot, even in paradise, but please keep your head down in the new world. During this period, the people who returned to Pala Island obviously did not give up their practice. Overall, their sword skills and physical strength grew by more than 100 points of experience, respectively. This was within Gawain's expectations, but what really surprised him was the observation hockey. The experience points required to upgrade to level 1 exceed the experience points required to upgrade physique to level 4? It seems that even between abilities, there are differences in levels. Gawain frowned slightly. Although he was still confused, this was the only reasonable explanation he could think of. After all, hockey would become prevalent in the new world, where strong people gather. In the Four Seas and the Paradise, there are many people who practice swordsmanship and physical skills and even develop their devil fruit ability, but there are only a handful of people who truly master hockey. From this perspective, the experience points required for the subsequent armament hockey and even conqueror hockey will be even greater. But even at Kuro's current speed, it will only take me less than half a month to grow to level 1, and then I can really put it into actual combat. After the 2 of them recover, my physique and pussyfoot maneuver skills will begin to improve again. And the armament hockey must also be arranged, otherwise, I will be too passive when facing a Logia devil fruit user. Replaying the battle with Smoker, Gawain felt aggrieved. In terms of hard power alone, he is undoubtedly superior to Smoker, but his Logia devil fruit directly invalidates his attacks. He could only suppress Smoker by using super fast thrusts and smashing him to pieces again and again. If the next time he faces something with direct killing power like the flame or magma, he will probably only have the option of running away. Hockey is a manifestation of the user's spirit. Everyone has it, but not everyone can awaken it. I already have the observation hockey, so can I apply the same knowledge to armament hockey? With this thought in mind, the next day, Gawain then entrusted the affairs of the pirate group to Django and asked the Nayab brothers to take a group of recovered brothers to the sea area near Raven Harbor to strangle the pirates and maintain the safety of the route as promised. He began to try to awaken the armament hockey in his body. It's one thing to say it, but it's another to do it. After several days, Gawain did not get anything, and he had no clue at all. A blind cat catches a dead mouse. Pure luck is enough to happen once. Without anyone to guide him, Gawain's concept of hockey only stayed at a few posts he had read in his previous life. That kind of stuff can't be said to be wrong, but it is ultimately just some outrageous talk, correct but useless, and cannot provide any help to Gawain now. But Gawain had no idea what to do, but Jin and Kuro, on the other hand, gradually started to gain strength. With the help of the Gawain badge's abilities, Jin's injuries recovered much faster than expected. After just 7 days, he took off the bandages on his body. Although many wounds were still covered with scabs, they no longer affected his normal movements. Under Gawain and Kuro's influence, Jin also gradually began to practice. Now, in the harbor, the sun was high above, scorching the earth, and the air on the surface was visibly distorted, and the chirping of cicadas all around made people even more restless. All the pirates have returned to the shade to avoid the sun, but only Jin keeps punching the scraped pirate ship. Bang! 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 The bloody fist left one dent after another on the hull. Under the stimulation of severe pain, Jin's mind was unusually clear. This period of time. As Jin got to know Gawain's pirate group better, he felt more and more empathetic towards Gawain's past experiences. He was once a benevolent captain who treated his subordinates the best. But when he was in danger, he was betrayed by his subordinates and had no choice but to draw his sword on them. Has his personality changed drastically since then? No wonder Captain Gawain was able to put aside his prejudice and come to my rescue even though I was his enemy. It is because we have similar experiences that we can understand each other best. Time passed slowly. Bang! When the last punch landed, Jin realized that the sun in the distance had already lost its last ray of light. The pain from his fist also made him realize that his body had reached its limit. If he continues, it may cause hidden injuries, which will not be worth the cost. Huh. Jin let out a long sigh and turned to leave. Thinking of Gawain's fried rice, his heart was filled with something he had never felt before. Nightfall. After trying to awaken his own armament hockey to no avail, Gawain returned to his room. Just when he was feeling depressed, a familiar prompt from the system came into his mind: Physique experience plus 127. Swordsmanship experience plus 8. Pussyfoot maneuver experience plus 22. Observation hockey experience plus 44. Gawain was stunned for a moment, and when he realized what was happening, his eyes widened. Physique experience increased by 127. Based on the recent rate, the experience points that others can provide are only a fraction of this. That is to say, Jin and Kuro provided about 120 points of physique experience. Not to mention the pussyfoot maneuver and observation hockey. The efficiency of these two people alone is enough to rival a large pirate group consisting of hundreds of people, and they can even last longer. At this rate, in a month at most, will my physique be able to level up twice and reach level 7? Even in half a year, I should be able to reach level 10 and obtain the second feature. As expected, a crew member with great potential can provide experience equivalent to hundreds or even thousands of small fry. The talent gap between individuals in this world is completely unreasonable. Chapter 42, All-Round Improvement. As for the pitiful 8 points of swordsmanship experience, Gawain could understand it. After all, there is almost no one in the pirate group who is good at using a sword except him. The potential of those ordinary pirates has been basically tapped to the limit, and the experience points they can provide can only be said to be better than nothing. Gawain narrowed his eyes slightly. After recruiting Nami, the next target would be Zoro. But compared to the others, Zoro's mind is undoubtedly much stronger. It is impossible to get such a person on board by relying solely on violence. However, meals must be eaten one step at a time, and the road must be walked one step at a time. First, do the things in front of you well and quickly improve your own strength. This is the hard truth. After that, the light in Gawain's room was turned off. 1 month later, the White Knight pirate entered a long period of recuperation. The previous series of battles had already left many people seriously injured. Even with the logistical support from Raven Harbor, many wounded still did not survive and died from wound infection or other complications. Although everyone was a little sad, they were used to this kind of thing. The life of a pirate is far from being as beautiful as shown in the manga. Death, fighting, and endless sailing are the norm. But, at this stage, those who survived are basically no longer in serious condition and will be able to recover after recuperating for a period of time. It's a blessing in disguise. After witnessing more deaths, Gawain gradually got used to this kind of life. Nightfall. Gawain's room was brightly lit, and the sea breeze blew in from the window, ruffling Gawain's hair. During this period, under the influence of the two people, Kuro and Jin, most of the people in the pirate group began almost rigorous training. One of them was staring at the area below Gawain's buttocks, while the other was still brooding over his previous defeat at the hands of Kuro. They all put in their best efforts and risked their lives. After recovering from their injuries, their strengths have greatly improved, and Gawain has reaped the benefits, gaining a large amount of experience points every day. Now, Gawain sat at the desk, carefully wiping the sword in his hand. During this month, although he still has not reached the threshold of armament hockey, he and Guan's Masamune have become more familiar with each other. Looking at the sword again at this moment, Gawain actually felt a blood connection with it. Suddenly, a familiar system prompt sounded in Gawain's mind: physique experience plus 133. Swordsmanship experience plus 6. Pussyfoot maneuver experience plus 32, observation hockey experience plus 54. Compared to half a month ago, all skills except swordsmanship have seen significant increases. With a large amount of experience pouring into his body, Gawain's physique and observation hockey, which had been stagnant for a long time, finally ushered in the moment of transformation. Physique, level 6, 2,987 3,000ths, greater than physique, level 7, 125,000, observation hockey, level 1, 998 1,000ths. Greater than observation hockey level 2, 52 2,000ths, along with the successive upgrades of the two, there are changes in his body again. A familiar warm current surged from his heart, along with the blood that reached every part of his body, nourishing every cell in his body, pushing his already strong physique to a higher peak. His skin turned visibly red, even emitting bursts of hot steam, and a large amount of impurities were discharged from his body through his pores. Despite this frightening change, Gawain did not feel any discomfort. He only felt his body becoming lighter and more coordinated. After a few seconds, the changes in his physical body gradually subsided, and the scorching steam in the room was gradually blown away by the sea breeze. Huh. Gawain opened his mouth and exhaled a breath of hot air, then took off his leather armor, revealing his muscular upper body. His size hadn't changed much. He became even thinner than before and had basically returned to his body shape just after traveling into this world. But he could feel that the basic capabilities of his body had been raised again. Strength, physique, agility. The three developed in a balanced manner under the constraints of the equilibrium feature, ensuring that every time he improved, he could reach the most ideal state of his body and could perfectly exert every bit of the body's strength. Feeling the changes in his body, Gawain couldn't suppress the ecstasy in his heart. At level 7, the strength, stamina, and agility have increased by nearly 40% compared to level 6 and have almost doubled compared to level 5. If I were to fight Smoker again at this time. Gawain suddenly clenched his fists with confidence in his eyes. He won't have the chance to throw the Nanashakujit into the sea. And the observation hockey also successfully broke through to level 2. Time to give it a try. After speaking, Gawain used his observation hockey, and then a strange feeling that was independent of his five senses appeared in his mind. The wind in the air, the waves on the sea, the chirping of insects in the corner, the snoring of the pirate downstairs. At this moment, everything came to Gawain's mind. The improvement of perception ability by observation hockey becomes more abnormal as the skill level increases. At this moment, Gawain was even looking forward to whether he would be able to awaken the ability to predict the future in a short period of time or other derivative abilities when he upgraded this ability to level 5. The next moment, Gawain unsheathed his sword, and a silver-white flying slash flew out of his hand, crossing a distance of hundreds of meters and cutting a shark that jumped up from the center of the harbor in half. Whoosh! Blood splattered, dyeing the sea red. The pirate in charge of the night watch rubbed his eyes. If it weren't for the shark's corpse still floating on the water, he would have thought he was hallucinating. He wanted to sound the alarm, but when he saw the location where the silver light had just come from, he put down the horn in his hand. I'm so stupid. Who else but the captain could do such a thing? But has the captain become stronger in such a short time? He turned his head to look at the attic in the distance, only to find that the windows there had already been closed as if what he had just done was just an insignificant thing. My captain is truly a monster. In the room, Gawain slowly put his sword into the scabbard, recalled his sharp perception just now, and couldn't help but exclaim, I can sense any creature from hundreds of meters away. No wonder that guy, Kuro, is so arrogant after awakening his observation hockey. Observation hockey is indeed consistent with what I inferred. It can make up for the defects of the pussyfoot maneuver. Kuro can even use it to push pussyfoot maneuver's speed to a higher peak. It's just the same thing, but I can do it even better. Gawain smiled slightly and opened the system panel. The familiar light blue screen appeared before his eyes. Host, Gawain, age, 24, identity, captain of the White Knight Pirate, skill, swordsmanship, level 5, 1439 1600, swiftness physique, level 7, 125,000, equilibrium navigation, level 1, 13/100ths, pussyfoot maneuver, level 3, 3800, observation hockey, level 2, 52 2000ths, badge, captain's fury, subordinates physical strength recovery speed plus 20%. Rising fame, you can check the potential level of your subordinates. Rating, bronze. You are a big shot, even in paradise, but please keep your head down in the new world. During this month, not only his physique and observation hockey had greatly improved, but even the pussyfoot maneuver he had learned from Kuro had also been upgraded by 2 levels, directly to level 3. Chapter 43, Kuro's challenge under the comprehensive enhancement. Gawain's combat power has been transformed and has skyrocketed several times compared to a month ago. If there is anything that is not perfect, it is the armament hockey. To be honest, Gawain felt frustrated after spending more than a month without even reaching the threshold. But he quickly came to his senses. Even Luffy, who started out with Diamond's potential, gradually grew up under the theoretical and practical guidance of Rayleigh, Hyogro, and Kaido. If Luffy simply relies on himself to figure things out, he may not be faster than him. This is the biggest difficulty of being a wild person. I have to rely on myself for everything, unlike the chosen ones, who never lack people to guide them on the way forward. But my current growth rate is already very fast. I have been in this world for just over 2 months, but I have already walked a path that most people would take years or even decades to walk. If it doesn't work, I'll have to wait until I enter Grand Line to find a solution. The East Blue is still too small. Gawain sighed with regret. Only then did he realize that his whole body was covered with sticky impurities. He turned and walked into the bathroom, simply washed off the dirt on his body, and went to bed to rest. Not long after, the sound of even breathing could be heard in the room. A few days later, several pirate ships, loaded with all kinds of supplies, sailed into the harbor of Pala Island. Django and his group walked down the gangway into the harbor with relaxed smiles on their faces that were completely different from before. During this time, they followed Gawain's orders to clear out the pirate forces near Raven Harbor. The bounties for these 3 people are all over 7 million, which is considered high in East Blue, where the average bounty is less than 5 million. Gawain's name has now spread, and with a bounty of 85 million, any pirate with a normal mind would not dare to provoke him easily. The remaining ones are most likely no match for the 3 combined, not to mention that Django also has the ability to hypnotize his subordinates to unleash their potential, which can greatly increase the overall combat effectiveness of the pirate group. Gawain also tries to let Django hypnotize him but finally comes to the conclusion that only people with weak minds or too simple minds can be hypnotized. With Django's level, he can at most hypnotize the Nayab brothers, and it is not difficult for them to dominate the East Blue. The 2 enhanced Nayab brothers will basically not have any major problems as long as they don't encounter players like Arlong. Far away, Bocce saw Gawain, who was waiting for him at the harbor. His eyes lit up instantly, and he walked quickly to Gawain with a smile on his face. He was so excited that he couldn't speak clearly. "Captain. This time, it feels so strange." "Well, it's just. Bocce scratched his head for a long time before he came up with a suitable adjective. "The people there don't seem to think of us as pirates. They even made fried fish for me." As he spoke, Bocce took out a package of dried fish wrapped in wax paper from his arms and handed it to Gawain as if he were offering a treasure. After seeing Gawain eat a few pieces, he touched his head with a silly smile on his face. "It seems a bit disrespectful. But this time, it really feels so weird. I can't tell what's wrong, but really, I want to protect that place. I want it to exist forever." Sham also came over, put a hand on Bocce's shoulder, and nodded to Gawain. "The kids there love my paws." Sham raised his palm as he spoke. They saw that the sharp claws on the gloves had been removed, leaving only pink balls of flesh. It is not as dangerous as before, but with his face, which is highly similar to that of a cat, he does have some cat-like temperament. Gawain smiled slightly and said lightly, "As long as you like it." As Gawain spoke, he looked past the Nayab brothers and felt relieved when he saw that everyone had a relaxed smile on their faces. After the last incident, the reputation of the White Knight pirate in Raven Harbor has completely changed, and the vast majority of civilians are extremely friendly to the members of the White Knight pirate. The treatment of the Nayab brothers today and the smiles on these people's faces further prove this point. He also had this consideration when he agreed to the deal with Gaza. Whether it is in Paradise or the New World, it is too dangerous for these pirates of mediocre strength. If they go there, they will probably die in the sea. Besides, before he obtained the title of warlord and established a stable base, he didn't need so many people to act together. The existence of Raven Harbor helped him solve the problem of how to place these subordinates. Even after he leaves with Kuro and others in the future, this deal can still continue. After all, Gaza's need for military force will not change. Instead of letting these subordinates plunder and fight with pirates everywhere and live a life of food insecurity, it is better to serve Raven Harbor as mercenaries and get a long-term meal ticket, leaving them a way to survive. Far away, Kuro looked at Gawain, then at the reactions of the Nyaban brothers, and instantly understood Gawain's plan. Gawain has decided to keep these people here. Is not that impossible? Jin, who was standing next to Kuro, was slightly stunned and retorted, "How can we cross a dangerous place like the Grand Line without a large fleet?" "Oh." Kuro smiled faintly, "So you still don't know enough about the Grand Line. It's hard for ordinary pirates to survive there. After a battle, Most of them might be killed or injured, and there would be no chance to erect a monument for them in such a place. Kuro blew out a smoke ring and turned to look at Jin. I'm still a little curious, what did that guy say to you that made you choose to board his ship? He said I was free and could choose where I wanted to go and that the position of the captain would be reserved for me until the ship arrived at the harbor. Kuro's hand trembled slightly, and bits of cigarette ash fell to the ground. That's the guy's style. But if I were the captain, would you still be willing to stay here? Jin shook his head, then nodded. As long as Mr. Gawain is here, I will be here. Kuro smiled helplessly. That guy's luck is really too good, but I will definitely be the captain. Jin was slightly stunned, then turned to look at Kuro. He recalled the results of his several sparring sessions with Gawain this month, and there was even a hint of pity in his eyes as he looked at Kuro. The feeling of being crushed from all angles is something that anyone with a weak mentality would not be able to withstand. Jin admitted that Kuro was very strong. Even if it wasn't for his luck, he would have died long ago in the harbor. But the gap between him and Gawain was like heaven and earth. After a while, Jin managed to utter a few words. Good luck. Ah. With Django and others returned, a huge bonfire was soon set up in the harbor. There is a whole circle of barbecues around, emitting bursts of oily aroma, which makes people's appetites whet. There are also neatly stacked breads and fruits on the side and mountains of wine and drinks. The banquet is gradually moving towards its climax. As everyone was drinking happily, the fleet's musicians began to play folk songs popular among the pirates, and a glass of wine went down their throats amid laughter. It was at this time that Kuro stood up in front of everyone and looked at Gawain calmly. I want to try and see who is more qualified to sit in that position between you and me now. Chapter 44, Fight with Kuro again. The originally lively banquet suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at Kuro in confusion, then at Gawain, before realizing what had happened. Deputy Captain, before Butchie could finish his words, he was held down by Jin. It is normal for crew members to challenge the captain in a pirate group, especially for someone like Kuro, who used to be the captain and was in control of everything. Everyone who reacted focused their attention on Gawain. Okay, Gawain smiled faintly, slowly picked up his sword beside him, and said, I'll satisfy you. Snort. Kuro's mouth curled up. Your arrogance is still so infuriating. I want to see if you can still smile after you lose. That's right. Kuro said mischievously, don't cry if you lose later. Gawain was stunned, then he remembered what he said last time and sighed, a vengeful fellow. Everyone quickly cleared out a space for Gawain and Kuro. The food and wine had been taken away, and only the fire in the center was still burning, just like the rising fighting spirit in Kuro's heart at this moment. A wave of heat swept through. The two men stood opposite each other without saying a word. They just took out their weapons silently, with nothing else in their sight except the opponent in front of them. An inexplicable atmosphere of solemnity condensed in the air. A trace of cold sweat broke out on Sham's forehead, and he nervously pulled Butchie back a distance. Django followed suit and also stepped back, standing shoulder to shoulder with the two men. Django, Butchie, who do you think will win this time? Butchie did not hesitate. Of course, it's the captain. The last time, that guy, Kuro, was beaten head-on by the captain. He had no power to resist at all. That's true. Sham nodded. Django, on the side, looked at Kuro and frowned slightly. I don't think so. How is this possible? Sham was stunned. With the captain's strength, how could he lose? Even if that guy Kuro has become stronger during this period, it should be limited, right? And I heard from my companions who participated in the battle at Raven Harbor that the captain was able to suppress the devil fruit user Marine. Such power is simply a monster. Django swung the ring-bladed flying knife with his fingertips and looked at Kuro with a look of tangible awe. I just heard from Jinat during the battle between Kuro and him. He awakened a power called observation haki, which can greatly enhance his perception ability. Not only can he perfectly control the pussyfoot maneuver, but he could even push the pussyfoot maneuver's speed to a higher peak. At such a high speed, if it is also flexible, even a monster like the captain may even have the possibility of overturning. The Naib brothers were silent for a moment. If they had a choice, they would certainly prefer to follow Gawain. After all, everyone knew exactly what life was like following Gawain and what life was like following Kuro. Who would want to have a captain with a fickle temper who would even treat his subordinates as disposable? Captain, you can't lose. The two of them muttered to themselves. In the pirate group, most people think the same as the Naib brothers. Kuro took in everyone's reactions and said to Gawain, you are a popular captain, but unfortunately, I will be the winner tonight. As the sound landed. Bang. Kuro took the lead in attacking. He stomped on the ground until the stone slabs were completely crushed. With the help of the feedback force, he was in a state of pussyfoot maneuver in just a second. The scene in front of Kuro's eyes was distorted, the sounds in his ears were mixed, and even his skin felt a tingling sensation. It was the pain caused by the skin hitting the air at ultra-high speed. Having lost all 5 senses, Kuro simply closed his eyes, and his fully mastered observation haki suddenly activated, and everything around him appeared clearly in his mind. The extremely fierce aura makes Gawain's presence completely impossible to ignore. Gawain. I see you. The last barrier that once held pussyfoot maneuver back has been completely broken through by me. My speed will be raised to a higher peak. Yeah? Gawain responded indifferently, his facial expression remained unchanged, but his heart began to struggle. How much strength should be used to win this battle without hitting Kuro? Forget it, let's give it a try. The next moment, the sword in Gawain's hand suddenly thrust out, colliding with Kuro's crossed claw blades. Bang! The sharp blades collided, making a sharp buzzing sound, and the onlookers subconsciously covered their ears. However, Kuro only felt an extremely powerful force coming from the cat claws, and there was an obvious sound of bones breaking from his 10 fingers holding the weapon. His body was directly knocked away, smashing the wooden building in the distance. Boom! After a shocking explosion, everyone finally reacted and looked at Gawain in astonishment. No. Has the captain ever been this strong? They couldn't close their jaws after seeing the scene in front of them. Forcibly intercepting Kuro's pussyfoot maneuver and defeating him was something Gawain had been able to do before. But to knock Kuro away so easily, like now, is not the same as before. Kuro is getting stronger, but Gawain is also getting stronger and even faster than Kuro. Realizing this, Django inexplicably developed a feeling. As the gap between him and Gawain widens, the help they can bring to them will become less and less, and one day, they will completely lose their value and become a complete burden rather than a help. So as Raven Harbor the retreat Captain Gawain left for them. Even if they can't follow him to the Grand Line, they don't have to fight other pirates for survival if we stay in the East Blue. After thinking this through, Django felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He just turned around and looked at the Nyaban brothers. Hey, Butchie, Sham. The Nyaban brothers turned their heads and looked at Django. Django took off his star-shaped sunglasses, rubbed his eyes, and put them back on. The fire flickered, and the Nyaban brothers couldn't see Django's expression clearly. They only heard him say in a firm tone, I just realized that Raven Harbor is the retreat that Captain Gawain left for us ordinary companions. Even if one day we can no longer keep up with the captain, we can still have a stable life here. No matter what the outcome of this battle is, I will stand on Captain Gawain's side. What about you? The two looked at each other and grinned at the same time. Isn't that a matter of course? Captain Gawain is a different being. At the side, Jin silently took in the reactions of the 3 people, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. So, Kuro, the battle has barely begun, and you've already lost. No matter what the outcome, this is Mr. Gawain's pirate group. Chapter 45, I, Gawain, am a great actor. In the ruins, Kuro pushed away the wooden board pressing on his body with one hand and stood up blankly. Who am I? Where am I? What happened? After subconsciously asking 3 philosophical questions in his mind, Kuro looked up at Gawain and saw that Gawain also had a confused expression on his face. Kuro's mouth twitched immediately. So this immense strength is the trump card you have been hiding, right? Kuro suppressed the surging blood in his chest and showed an expression that seemed to see through everything. Unfortunately, strength is nothing compared to my speed. Gawain was speechless for a moment. He was originally worried about how to explain so that Kuro wouldn't completely lose hope. Now, it seems that he was too narrow-minded. For a suitable leak, self-strategy is a must. Moreover, this attack also made Gawain finally understand how exaggerated the increase in his comprehensive quality, which was almost doubled, could bring him under perfect coordination. The growth in strength alone is definitely not as simple as doubling it literally. The instantaneous burst of power can even increase by 3 or 4 times. Only this way could he knock Kuro away so easily. You have to know that he only used 50% of his strength just now. If it was a full-strength attack, there was a high probability that Kuro would not be able to stand up after this blow. This also made Gawain subconsciously control his strength. Far away, Kuro rubbed his sore shoulder and moved his fingers. After making sure that the injury would not affect his movements, he tiptoed on the spot and disappeared into the air the next moment. For a while, the only thing around was Kuro's flickering figure. Even the flames on the fire were blown all over the place by the wind created by Kuro. Whoosh! The familiar scene reminded the people around them of their companions who had been seriously injured or even killed by Kuro's move, and they all subconsciously moved backward. But halfway through, they were surprised to find that there was not a single extra scratch around. Wrong. Kuro really has perfect control over the pussyfoot maneuver. We don't have to worry about being accidentally injured anymore. Sham turned his head and looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. The stone slabs on the ground were constantly crushed by Kuro's feet, and his figure completely disappeared into the air. Kuro's speed is even faster than before. Django uttered a cry of surprise. Originally, when Kuro used the pussyfoot maneuver, he could still see a big shadow, but now he can't see anything clearly. This only means that Kuro's speed has been pushed to a higher level. Faster. Stronger. For a while, everyone looked at Gawain with a hint of worry in their eyes. With such speed, can Captain Gawain really handle it? Although the attack just now was powerful, it would be useless if the speed could not keep up. It should be alright, right? After all, even with Kuro's speed, shouldn't the captain be able to react? Just as Butchie's words gave everyone a sense of security, a piercing sound appeared in the air in the distance. Whoosh! Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Suddenly, a crack appeared in Gawain's leather armor. Perhaps due to good luck, there was no obvious blood stain. Everyone's heart was instantly lifted up. Even the captain can't keep up? What to do? Are we really going to follow Kuro? Sham ran his fingers through his hair. If he had not experienced what happened in Raven Harbor, he might have been able to accept his previous life, but now there is no going back. Butchie and Django clenched their fists and secretly worried about Gawain. Only Jin looked at Gawain suspiciously and asked doubtfully, "It shouldn't be. Captain, you weren't at this level the last time you beat me up. Is it because of your bond with Kuro that you can't do it? Hateful. I will definitely surpass you, Kuro. I will be Captain Gawain's most capable subordinate." While Jin was strategizing on himself, Gawain's clothes got a few more cuts, and he had a constipated expression on his face. Not only must he control his desire to attack, but he must also control Guan's mass immune from slashing down. "It's so hard for me." Kuro, who was charging forward, was laughing like crazy. "Really? After I increase my speed to another level, even your nerve reaction speed can't keep up with me, Gawain." Ha 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 ha. Kuro's triumphant laughter echoed all around, and everyone couldn't help but feel an inexplicable pressure in their hearts. Jin clenched his fists and shouted in his heart, "Mr. Gawain. No matter how kind you are to your subordinates, there must be a limit. You'll really get hurt if you keep going like this." For a moment, the situation on the scene was strange. Kuro kept attacking, leaving scars on Gawain's body, but none of them hurt his flesh. 10 minutes later, Gawain felt that it was about time, and a look of seeing through you appeared on his face. "I found your weakness, Kuro." The next moment, a silver-white light appeared on Kuro's path, but it turned over the moment it hit Kuro. The sharp edge that was originally slashing toward Kuro instantly changed to the blunt back of the sword, and then it collided fiercely with Kuro's chest. Boom! At the same location, Kuro crashed into the ruins for the second time. He struggled to stand up, but his hands were completely powerless. Kuro felt the pain coming from all parts of his body and knew that his body had reached its limit. But he was not discouraged at all because, this time, he felt that the gap between him and Gawain was much closer. It's no longer like it used to be, with no hope at all. "I will definitely beat you next time, Gawain. I'll be waiting for you in the captain's seat." Gawain responded, then pretended to be out of breath, walked up to Kuro, and pulled him up with a smug smile on his face. "It seems that I am more skilled than you." Snort. Kuro snorted coldly, but a smile appeared on his face, a complacent fellow. "The battle ends here." There was a burst of cheers all around instantly. The banquet, which had been suspended due to Kuro's sudden challenge, started again. The Nyaban brothers and Django were so excited that they danced a strange dance around the fire, causing everyone to laugh. The musicians in the pirate group also began to play familiar music at this moment. The White Knight pirates were relieved and enthusiastically sang along with the musicians' accompaniment. They were tone-deaf and couldn't remember the lyrics, but they sang with great emotion, "Yo-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho. Yo-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho. Gather up all of the crew, it's time to ship out Bink's brew. Sea wind blows, to where, who knows? The waves will be our guide. Or across the ocean's tide, rays of sunshine far and wide. Birds they sing, of cheerful things, in circles passing by. Bid farewell to Weaver's town, say so long to Port Renowned. Sing a song, it won't be long before we're casting off. Cross the gold and silver seas, a salty spray puts us at ease. Day and night, to our delight, the voyage never ends." Even Kuro was infected by the singing of the crowd. He drank cup after cup of beer with Gawain. Seeing the smile on Gawain's face, Kuro was slightly stunned. Why did this guy not even sweat? Impossible. Kuro shook his head. "I must have seen it wrong. I still have hope. As long as I work harder, I can defeat Gawain and regain the captain's throne." Jin sat quietly aside, looking at Kuro from time to time while sneering in his heart, "Just wait and see. I will defeat you and become the captain's most capable subordinate." Gawain looked at Kuro, whose fighting spirit was unprecedentedly burning, and then looked at the system panel. He couldn't suppress the smile on his face at all. If you work harder, I will be able to reach the peak of my life, punching the 4 emperors and kicking the celestial dragons. Chapter 46, Hope. A few days later. The wounded members of the White Knight Pirate have basically recovered. With the help of the Niab brothers and Django in Raven Harbor, the nearby routes have gradually stabilized. According to Gaza, in the past month, there have been many more merchant ships coming from all over the world, as well as merchants in the East Blue itself. Raven Harbor made a lot of money, and Jasmine smiled like a little fox. As a result, the support for Gawain's pirate group was upgraded to several levels. Everyone's living standards have improved visibly. Even Shem, who was originally extremely thin, has become visibly fatter. I don't know if it will affect the battle. Gawain looked at Shem, who was gradually gaining weight, and Butchie, who was becoming even fatter, and sighed helplessly. The two of them, however, rubbed their heads in a somewhat naive manner. Seeing this, Gawain was too lazy to say anything to them and issued an order. We've rested for so long, it's time to start taking action. Go find Kuro and Jin. Yes. The two responded and hurriedly opened Gawain's door and chose to leave. A few minutes later, 2 equally thin figures, one tall and one short, walked into the hall of Pala Island side by side. Both of them had beads of sweat on their bodies, and it was obvious that they were still in a state of training. Kuro did not even take off the cat claws in his hand and had an unhappy look on his face as if he had been interrupted. Gawain, what's the hurry? Gawain did not argue with Kuro because of the experience he contributed every day. Instead, he went straight to the point and said, It's time to take back the treasure that was stolen from us. After all, with the structure of our current ships, we simply cannot sail normally in the bad weather of the Grand Line. If we want to build a strong enough ship, we need money. Kuro nodded and asked, where is the target? Gawain took out a chart of the East Blue from the table beside him. After searching for a while, he pointed to one of the islands. Here. After taking a closer look, Jin frowned. If I remember correctly, this place and dozens of nearby villages are all the territory of the Arlong the Saw. There are rumors in the East Blue that this guy is from the Grand Line. I'm afraid he won't be that easy to deal with. Oh. Kuro sneered, in the East Blue, we have no rivals. Gawain looked at Kuro. An old guy in his 70s who was extremely strong suddenly appeared in my mind, and he subconsciously muttered, I remember that in the manga, Garp never returned to the East Blue after handing Luffy and others over to Diden, right? I hope I remember it correctly. How? Kuro wondered. Gawain shook his head. It's okay. If nothing unexpected happens, there is indeed no pirate group in the East Blue that can be our opponent. Krieg? Can't do it, and Arlong can't do it either. And this time, our goal is not just the treasure. In Kokoyasi village, there is also a first-class navigator. Who? Kuro's eyes lit up. There's a new navigator on a ship, but Kuro is well aware of the navigator's level. It is good enough to handle the voyage in the East Blue. If they really take him to the Grand Line, they're simply courting death. Not to mention, the last incident made him realize how important an excellent navigator was to a pirate group. Gawain smiled faintly. You'll know when we find it. Oh, pretending to be mysterious. The corner of Kuro's mouth twitched, and he stopped talking immediately. Jin naturally had no opinion on Gawain's decision. After all, this kind of decision-making work is usually decided by the captain, deputy captain, and navigator. The three of them finalized a plan and set off the next day. A small pirate ship in the harbor, carrying enough supplies to last for more than half a month, slowly sailed towards the distant sea. This time, Gawain only brought more than 20 crew members, and their only task was to maintain the ship's normal sailing. If a real battle breaks out, too many people would be more of a burden than a help to Gawain and the other two, so it would be better to keep the number of people as small as possible. The pirate ship sailed forward and gradually disappeared at the end of the horizon. East Blue, Kokoyasi village. At the edge of the village, Nami stood under an orange tree, looking at the treasure buried in the pit, stretching out her fingers and calculating the value of these things bit by bit. The more she spoke, the brighter her eyes became, and a bright smile appeared on her face. Even if I use the lowest conversion rate in the East Blue, the value of these treasures exceeds 100 million belly, which is enough for me to redeem the village. Originally, she was still a long way from her goal, but this time, when she teamed up with Karina, she gained more than she had imagined. Although she went through countless hardships, and even several times, she almost died at the hands of pirates. But looking at the treasures in front of her, Nami felt that everything she had paid was worth it. As for the pirates who lost their treasures, it can only be considered as their bad luck. After all, these things were basically looted from various islands. Then the villagers won't have to work for Arlong anymore and won't have to pay the 100,000 belly protection fee every month. Genzo won't have to risk his life to protect everyone, and there's also no Jiko. While talking to herself, tears slid down Nami's face, fell to the ground, and were absorbed by the soil. A few minutes later, Nami wiped the tears from her face, buried the treasure carefully, and even found leaves to spread on the ground as camouflage. Then she turned around and left carefully. She didn't notice at all a fishman who popped his head out from the bottom of the water from time to time in the distance. Bang! The room on the top floor of Arlong Park was violently pushed open by Nami. Arlong, who was sitting in the middle, was discussing recent matters with Nezumi when he saw a familiar face. Nezumi glanced at Nami, then turned to Arlong and said, "Then let's just settle the recent matters. I won't bother you anymore." Arlong nodded, ignoring Nami, who pushed the door open and said to Hachin beside him, "Hachin, go and see our friends off." "Okay." The octopus fishman, Hachin, smiled foolishly, waved at Nezumi, and left with the latter. Now, Arlong just focused his attention on Nami, with a playful smile on his face, revealing his sharp teeth. "Isn't his our navigator? You look so proud. Have you collected enough money to redeem the village?" "Certainly." Nami looked at Arlong with burning eyes. "I want to buy back the Kokoyasi village from you. As long as you have money, everything is easy to discuss." There was a hint of amusement in Arlong's eyes, and then, under the leadership of Nami, he came to the edge of the Kokoyasi village. Then he looked at Nami, digging up the treasure she had hidden. "They are all here. Even at the lowest selling price in the East Blue, the value of these treasures exceeds 100 million belly." After speaking in front of everyone, Nami slowly opened her treasure chest. Arlong glanced at it, and his expression turned cold. "Are you joking with me?" Chapter 47, Lost Treasure. "How is that possible? You want to break your promise?" Nami was furious, but she subconsciously looked down at her treasure chest. "There's nothing inside. This is impossible. I just checked, it's in here." Nami looked confused, and then she became extremely panicked. There should have been treasures worth more than 100 million in the treasure chest. Those were treasures that she had just collected after spending countless efforts and escaping death several times over the past few years. With that money, she could have redeemed the village from Arlong, and everyone wouldn't have to live so hard. But now, everything is gone. "Nami." Arlong grabbed Nami's hair and lifted her up. Seeing her struggling in severe pain, he felt extremely happy in his heart. Before, the invading humans on Fishman Island also captured his compatriots in the same way, ignoring their wailing and tears, dragging them away, and selling them all over the world. They may become materials on the experimental table, slaves in dark caves, or even have their hands and feet chopped off and become works of art for people to appreciate. Arlong sighed in his heart and then lowered his voice and said in Nami's ear, "I can let you go this time, but if it happens again, the price you pay to redeem the village will double." "It's you." Nami pursed her lips and looked at Arlong angrily. "You stole my treasure. Are you confused? I've been following you all the time, and I was discussing something with Nezumi before, so I don't have the time to steal your things. Think carefully about who it is." Nami was stunned for a moment, then she clenched her teeth and uttered a name that she didn't even want to believe. "It's Karina." "It's her." Arlong's smile widened when he saw this. He gently patted Nami's face and said, "I'll give you half a month. If you can't find it, the price for redeeming the village next time will be." Arlong held up 2 fingers. 200 million belly. "How is this possible?" Nami was startled and subconsciously raised her voice, and then she saw Arlong grinning and extending his 3rd finger. "I've changed my mind. If you can't get the money back within half a month, the price of Kokoyasi village will triple. That's 300 million belly. I will definitely get it back." Nami pursed her lips tightly, not even caring about the pain in her head, and agreed without hesitation. It was because she didn't know what a desperate price Arlong would offer if she continued, but did she have any choice? This is an unfair deal in itself. But as long as she didn't want to watch the people of Kokoyasi die, she had no choice. Shay ha 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 ha. Arlong let out his signature hideous laugh, then threw Nami into the pit and slowly turned and left. A few minutes later, Arlong gradually walked away, and Nami's heart-wrenching wails gradually came from the edge of the orange grove. "Arlong!" Nojiko rushed over when she heard the noise but stopped the moment she saw Nami's figure. Even though she didn't know what had happened, she could feel Nami's despair. Half an hour later, Nami staggered out of the pit while gritting her teeth. Nojiko said nothing, she just hugged Nami in her arms and said through gritted teeth while looking at Nami, "Nami, if you're tired, just run away. You'll just lose a bunch of people who hate you anyway. Us. It's not worth it." Nami didn't respond but just hugged Nojiko tightly. Nojiko patted Nami on the back, but her body trembled slightly because she felt the wetness on her chest. "Cry. It's okay to cry." The next day, When Nojiko woke up, Nami was no longer by her side, and there was a letter with a smiley face and oranges on it left at the bedside. I will get those treasures back, even if it means breaking up with my friend. Nojiko read the contents of the letter and felt like he couldn't breathe for a moment. She slowly put away the letter, walked out to the sheriff's room, raised her hand, and knocked on the door. Bang! 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 A few seconds later, a thin middle-aged man with a windmill on his head and scars all over his face pushed open the door. The man was Genzo, the sheriff of the Kokoyasi village. However, with the arrival of Arlong and his gang and the collusion between the Marines and the Arlong pirates, the position of sheriff has become a joke. But this man still did not give up. Even at the risk of his life, he was determined to protect the people in the village. Genzo, Nami hasn't given up yet. I don't know what happened to her, but she seems to have lost everything overnight. Do you think that even if she meets Arlong's conditions, will Arlong really hand over the Kokoyasi village to her? Genzo shook his head. How is that possible? How credible can the pirate's words be? I'm going to find out what happened. Be careful. Nojiko nodded but still couldn't help asking, I don't understand why everyone knows what Nami is going to do but still speaks badly to her. I even saw children insulting her. Genzo paused. Nojiko, every bit of kindness we show her will only increase the village's status in her heart. If one day she is really tired and wants to leave, how can she overcome the guilt in her heart? After saying that, Genzo left quickly, leaving Nojiko standing at the door in a daze. At the same time, on the top floor of Arlong's paradise, a pile of treasures covered in dirt was placed on the table in front of Arlong. He picked up his handkerchief and wiped the treasures clean one by one. Every time he put down one thing, Arlong's mind couldn't help but reflect Nami's expression, and an inexplicable sense of pleasure surged from the bottom of his heart. Nami. My navigator, my doll. If one day you find out that this is all a scam and you can never buy your own village, what kind of expression will you have? Will it be like my compatriots, who can't help but feel pity for me? But why don't humans have such emotions? Bang. Arlong crushed the gem in his hand, his expression ferocious to the extreme. Humans without such emotions should be the lowest and most inferior creatures in this world. Bang. 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 At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Arlong said expressionlessly, come in. Kirubi pushed the door open and said, Arlong, that guy, Nezumi, sent us a message asking us to pay attention to a group of pirates who have been active in the East Blue recently. Who? Gawain, the captain of the White Knight pirate, whose bounty reached 85 million belly, which is not a low number even in the Grand Line. Shay ha 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 ha. Chapter 48, My name is Karina. Arlong covered his eyes with one hand and laughed loudly. He only stopped when Kirubi looked a little uneasy. 85 million? In a place like the New World, such a bounty can't even support a pirate flag. Besides, even if I don't want to admit it, my bounty has not increased over the years because of that guy, Nezumi. Otherwise, it would have exceeded that number long ago. What kind of strong people can be born in such a barren land as the East Blue? Or are humans born to be enslaved by the fishmen? Arlong sneered. Kirubi on the side also nodded when he heard this. After staying at the East Blue for several years, countless pirates who once dominated a region were ultimately defeated miserably when faced with the sharp teeth and claws of the fishmen. The continuous victories also gave them confidence beyond imagination. But such a high bounty while still in the East Blue. Arlong frowned slightly. Out of caution, he took the bounty from Kirubi. After a moment of hesitation, a playful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I know who this guy is. White Knight Gawain, a former knight of the Kingdom of Goa, is said to have slept with the princess and is wanted. The bounty offered at the underworld was as high as 50 million belly. The sudden increase in bounty may be related to this. After all, in the East Blue, which kingdom noble has no connection with the Marines? Kirubi nodded. Hearing Arlong's words, Kirubi completely let go of his guard. After taking a closer look at the bounty, he finally realized what was going on. Is not this the story that Nami likes the most? Ah. Arlong grinned. Once Nami's matter is settled, we will go there. After all, it is a head worth 85 million. Shay ha 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 ha. In the office, there was a burst of shrill laughter, and the people passing by quietly lowered their heads and quickly left. A few days later. The wind is cool, the waves are mild, the sky is high, and the clouds are light. A small pirate ship with a flag bearing the striking emblem of a round shield in the background and a carved skull on the shield is particularly eye-catching as it sails across the sea. Pirates who are familiar with the situation in the East Blue will flee the moment they see this flag. This is because the owner of this flag is the man with the highest bounty in the East Blue and is even known as the #1 swordsman in the East Blue. White Knight, Gawain. Gawain was sitting on the deck at the moment, looking at the undulating sea in the distance, but his attention was focused on the system panel. Recently, Kuro and Jin secretly competed with each other. Even during the voyage, they continued to practice in the training room. If you practice for 12 hours, I will practice for 13 hours. My main goal is to practice to the death as long as I can. The two worked tirelessly, and of course, it all benefited Gawain in the end. In just 1 week, his physique gained more than 1,000 experience points, and his pussyfoot maneuver and observation hockey also grew significantly. Although there is still a clear distance to go before promotion, who cannot love such hardworking employees? The only flaw is probably that with the huge consumption of practice, the two people's food appetites have increased several times. The direct consequence of this was that there was not enough food on the ship. A pirate dressed as a chef walked out of the cabin quickly and said to Gawain with a slightly embarrassed look, "Captain, we only have enough food left to last for 3 days. If we continue sailing without any supplies, I'm afraid." Gawain nodded, "No problem. There is a harbor a few hundred nautical miles away that isn't supervised by the Marines. We can go there to replenish food and fresh water." "Understood." The pirate dressed as a chef finally breathed a sigh of relief, nodded, turned around, and went into the cabin to prepare today's dinner. The ship turned and headed towards the nearby Dia harbor. The sky gradually darkened, and a sudden cry came from the pirate standing on the watchtower. "Captain, there's a boat over there." "Damn it, how could something like that possibly sail on the sea?" "It's a woman." Gawain heard the sound and looked into the distance. In the distance, a young girl was sitting on a small boat. She was about 15 or 16 years old, with a youthful face and short orange hair. From Gawain's perspective, he could even see the girl's pale face and chapped lips. It was obvious that she had not had a drop of water for some time. If she did not get timely supplies, death would be a matter of time. Gawain was slightly stunned, and just then, he connected the girl in front of him with the image in his mind. Although she is much younger than I remembered, it is definitely Nami. It was a piece of cake. Gawain smiled and turned to look at the helmsman. "Come closer." A few minutes later, Nami sat on the deck, gulped down several large bowls of fresh water, and ate some bread and oranges before she breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm saved." She then turned to look at Gawain, revealing a grateful expression. "Thank you, kind sir. As long as I can repay you, I would do anything." Gawain glanced at Nami's flat chest and immediately felt bored. "If you want to repay me, why not join board my ship? I need a good navigator." Nami was slightly stunned. Does he know her information? No, only the people in the Arlong Pirates and the village knew that she drew the sea chart for Arlong. She must have misunderstood. But Karina was not found, so this pirate group should have a lot of treasures, and perhaps she can collect enough to pay the ransom to Arlong. Thinking of this, Nami gritted her teeth secretly but showed an obsessed expression to Gawain. "It's my honor to serve as a crew member for such a handsome and kind captain like you. May I have your name?" Nami's lips curled up. "My name is Karina." Gawain immediately understood what Nami was planning. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Coming here for the second time after stealing before? You really think I'm a fat sheep, don't you? The monk can run away, but the temple cannot. As long as you don't leave the Kokoyasi village, you can't escape from my palm." Gawain smiled and said, "My name is Lancelot." The people who had just walked onto the deck were slightly stunned but did not interrupt Gawain. Kuro, who was familiar with Gawain's ways, took a step forward, nodded to Nami, and said, "My name is Locke, and I'm the deputy captain of this pirate group." Without waiting for Gawain to interrupt, Kuro continued, "We just had a fierce battle with the White Knight pirate. Fortunately, we escaped quickly and did not suffer too many casualties." Gawain. Okay, that's how you want to play, right? Just wait for me. Next time, I won't let you speak first." Kuro ignored Gawain's murderous look and quietly retreated behind Jin. The psychological trauma left by the last incident was so great that he was slightly wary of Gawain's style. "Now, take a look." "Oh, as expected." Jin looked at the two people with strange expressions, and especially after hearing the familiar lines, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he introduced himself. "My name is Jin, and I'm cadre of this pirate group." Nami looked at the three people with gratitude, and her eyes immediately stopped at Gawain's face. "Captain, why do you look familiar to me?" "Yeah?" Gawain reached out and touched his face, worried that Nami would notice something, so he subconsciously explained, "I've always been told that I look like a star." Yes. Nami nodded repeatedly. "That's the one." The charming princess falls in love with the hero in the story of the Loyal Knight. Chapter 49, Thief. Gawain's expression froze. Ha 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 ha. The pirates, who gradually gathered around, witnessed this scene and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Even Jin, who had a cold face most of the time, couldn't help but turn his head away, and it took a lot of effort to control his emotions. but the slightly upturned corners of his mouth still revealed his true expression. Nami looked at everyone suspiciously. "What's wrong?" Kuro gave Gawain an imperceptible glance and explained, "Nothing, it's just that we all love watching this drama." "Really?" Nami's eyes lit up, and she immediately pulled Kuro aside to discuss the plot in detail. When she was moved, Nami's eyes even turned red, and she shed tears. "Do you really like this relationship?" "No, what's so good about this thing?" Seeing this, Gawain didn't know where to start and noticed the expressions of the pirates around him who wanted to laugh but didn't dare to, so he simply walked into the cabin. Instead, Nami pulled Kuro aside and talked about the plot for several hours, from the movie to the novel and even the derivative peripherals. Kuro's expression also changed from trying to hold back a smile to being indifferent and finally to being completely numb, turning into a nodding man. The two chatted until late at night, and Nami finally stopped. Just as Kuro breathed a sigh of relief, Nami's voice came to his ears. "Deputy Captain is not pretending to be a fan, you really like this movie. We'll continue tomorrow." Kuro stumbled and replied weakly, "As long as you are happy." The night deepens. Nami was also led by the crew into the room assigned to her. Squeak. The door opened, and a slightly simple room was revealed. There was a table facing the porthole, a single bed, and a desk parallel to the bow, which was filled with books related to navigators. The dim oil lamp began to burn, swaying continuously with the swaying of the ship. The warm light shone on Nami's face, reflecting her complex expression. The crew member nearby saw that Nami was a little surprised and explained, "This is the room that the captain prepared specifically for the navigator. There are no other vacancies on the ship right now. If you don't like it, I can ask the captain to change it." "No need. I like it so much." The crew member nodded, gave Nami a few more instructions, and then turned and left. After a simple wash, Nami sat directly on the bed, reached out and stroked the soft and dry quilt, then turned her head to look out the window. A few days later, Nami officially became a part of Gawain's ship. She was a well-known thief in the East Blue, and communication was one of the most important basic abilities in this line of work. In the past few days, she had basically extracted everything from the crew except the identities of Gawain and the other two and their recent experiences. The pirate captain who treated his subordinates with the warmest kindness and never attacked civilians was betrayed by his subordinates at the most dangerous moment. He had no choice but to wield his sword to resist. The deputy captain who had fought for more than 10 years wanted to become an ordinary person and live a stable and comfortable life, but in the end, he could not achieve his wish. Once a pirate, always a pirate. The most loyal cadre, who took the knife for the captain, was still ruthlessly abandoned. Recalling her experiences in recent days, Nami's eyes became more complicated. But as the faces of the people in the village appeared before her eyes, Nami's heart gradually became firmer. It's not like she had never thought about diverting the trouble to someone else and letting the two pirate groups fight each other, but after spending the past few days together, she had given up on that idea. In her opinion, Gawain and others would never be a match for Arlong. If they really faced Arlong, they would just be sending themselves to die in vain. And now, she no longer wanted to watch Gawain and the others die. Woo! Accompanied by a whistle, the pirate ship gradually stabilized. After lying that she was feeling ill to Kuro, who came to find her to go to the harbor for shopping, she watched everyone slowly disappearing into the harbor. She followed the information she had extracted from the pirates in the past few days, knocked out the pirate guarding the door, and quietly sneaked into the place where the treasure was stored. And what was hidden inside did not disappoint her. Dazzling gems and sparkling gold. Even without counting them in detail, she could accurately judge the value of these things, which was beyond imagination. After packing up the treasure, Nami wanted to leave immediately, but Gawain and the others' faces came to her mind. She looked up at the weather in the harbor and quickly returned to her room. After leaving a letter, she took the treasure, changed into men's clothes, and slipped away quietly. In the harbor, Gawain and the other two looked at Nami's disappearing back with expressionless faces. Jin and Kuro are both veterans, and Gawain saw through Nami's plan directly. How could they not see such poor acting skills? "Captain, I don't understand why you would indulge this woman to this extent." Kuro looked at Gawain and said in a slight tone, "Could it be that you no longer love the princess but this girl? If you mention this again, I'll chop you to pieces." The corner of Gawain's mouth twitched, and he felt that he was about to have the urge to draw his sword. He then led the two back to the ship, pushed open the door of the navigator's room, and found a letter on the table. The content of the letter was extremely simple, with only 2 lines. "Tomorrow night at 11:30 India Harbor, a storm is coming. After completing your purchases, leave as soon as possible. As a reward, I will take the treasure on the ship with me." In the end, she even thoughtfully drew a windmill pattern. Kuro looked at the contents of the letter and reacted instantly. "Is this woman the navigator you are looking for?" Excuse me, if there is any position on the ship that values experience the most, it's the navigator. The sea is unpredictable. Even the most experienced navigator can make mistakes, and her message is even accurate to the minute. How is that possible? Kuro shook his head. She was only 15 or 16 years old. She was still a baby when I went to sea. Then he looked at Gawain again, and you are still flirting with the princess. Fuck you. Gawain's eyes turned red, and he was about to draw his sword on the spot. Fortunately, Jin acted quickly and held down his sword. Captain, don't do this. Snort. Gawain put the sword back into the sheath with a dark face and said calmly, she can't run away. Then Gawain looked at Kuro and said, how about we make a bet? We'll stay here for a day, and if there's a storm tomorrow night, you'll wash everyone's socks on the boat. For 1 month. Jin took a deep breath when he heard this, looked at Gawain, and then looked at Kuro. Captain, are you not going too far? Deal. Kuro did not wait for Gawain to take back his word and agreed immediately. I don't believe that a teenage girl can reach such a high level in navigation. It's enough to estimate the storm, but she can even infer the exact time of its arrival? That's impossible. Gawain, I'm waiting for you to wash my socks. Chapter 50, A Real Man Does What He Says. Oh. Gawain sneered. He had a good idea of Nami's level of navigation skills. Even though she is not old enough, the fact that she can predict climate change down to the minute shows that she has absolute confidence in herself. Thinking of Nami's performance in the manga, Gawain never thought that he would lose. But, if he explains it to Kuro at this time, he probably won't believe it, so he might as well teach him a lesson. It's definitely not that he wants to see him wash socks. Jin, who was standing by, looked at Gawain, then at Kuro, and thought, no matter who wins, someone will help me wash my socks. But in his heart, he still stood on Gawain's side. He had not yet avenged his defeat at Kuro's hands in Raven Harbor. The key point was that he really could not beat him. But after this incident, Jin felt that he could eat him for the rest of his life. Thinking of this, Jin couldn't help but smile. Gawain gave him a suspicious look, then ignored him. He asked everyone in the pirate group to deliver the purchased food, fresh water, and other supplies onto the ship and then carefully parked the ship in a safer place. Only after completing this action did he feel at ease to go on board and rest. The time passed quickly, but until the next night, the harbor was peaceful. Not to mention the storm, even the sea breeze became milder and even brought a hint of warmth when it blew on people. Gawain and the other two stood on the deck, quietly waiting for the time Nami mentioned. After looking around, Kuro turned back to look at Gawain and said jokingly, Captain, how about this? If you admit defeat now, I can be generous, and you just need to help me wash my socks. Give up? You should think about how to wash everyone's socks on the ship. Gawain did not back down but just looked at the calm sea in the distance, feeling somewhat uncertain. If Nami's navigation skills had only developed in the last few years under Arlong, that would have been a big joke. Wrong. Nami probably spent most of her time in the first few years honing her navigation skills and drawing nautical charts and then raising the money to buy the Kokoyasi village in the next few years. Thinking of this, Gawain gradually calmed down, leaned on the deck, and looked calmly at the sea in the distance. Time slowly passed by. It was not until nearly 11:20 in the evening that Gawain could no longer sit still as a layer of mist suddenly blew over the sea in the distance. The clouds in the sky gathered at an astonishing speed. In just a few minutes, they obscured the stars and the moon. Lightning flashed in the thick, leaden clouds. The wind, which had been somewhat warm originally, changed at this moment, mixing with water vapor and blowing the chill of the sea into the bone marrow, and the pirate flag on the ship also began to dance wildly. Whoosh! The cold wind and rain hit Kuro's face. A flash of lightning illuminated the night sky, allowing Gawain to see the ghostly expression on Kuro's face. Is it really that accurate? Kuro didn't believe it, so he raised his wrist to check the time and saw that the minute hand had just reached 11:30. Not more, not less. At this moment, an urgent announcement came from the loudspeaker in the harbor. The storm is coming. The storm is coming. Ships in the harbor, please take precautions. Ships in the harbor, please take precautions. On the deck, Gawain patted Kuro's shoulder. What do you think now? The corner of Kuro's mouth twitched, and he selectively forgot about the bet and spoke directly. This woman is our navigator. Also, I suddenly feel a little dizzy, so I'm going back to the cabin to rest for a while. Kuro disappeared from the deck without waiting for Gawain's reply. He returned to his room, locked the door, and even put on earplugs. As long as I can't hear it, then there is nothing. Washing a boatload of big men's socks, you might as well just kill me. What a pity. The two men on the deck had no intention of letting him go so easily. Gawain and Jin looked at each other and smiled evilly at the same time. He. The next day, Kuro opened the door of his room tentatively, and as soon as he pushed it a little, a strong smell hit him in the face. He lowered his head and saw hundreds of pairs of socks quietly placed at the door of the room. The smell of sweat mixed with the athlete's foot was so irritating that his eyes turned red. And at the door handle, there was a note: "A real man does what he says." Kuro's mouth twitched, and he looked at the socks at the door and broke down immediately. Gawain, who was standing on the deck directing the pirate ship to set sail, heard the voice in the cabin and immediately smiled. Jin next to him also had a smirk on his face. The two looked at each other and laughed. Ha ha ha. The storm lasted only 2 days and was gone just as quickly as it came, but the damage it caused was extremely severe. Nearly 1/5 of the ships in the harbor were blown over and sank into the sea, and the rest also suffered heavy losses. If Gawain had not moved the ship to a safe place in time and folded the sails, his small pirate ship would probably not have been able to escape. Looking at the tragic situation in the harbor, even Kuro couldn't help but sigh. This woman's navigation skills are truly unconventional, but what's so good about that crappy movie? Gawain glanced at him imperceptibly. The crew was then asked to check the hull and confirm that the structure was not damaged and would not affect subsequent navigation. Then, they set sail and headed for Kokoyasi village according to the predetermined course. In the harbor, two figures looked at the pirate ship getting farther away, with cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. Yozaku, you also saw it clearly, right? That flag, that man standing on the deck, it must be White Knight Gawain. The man who has been hailed as the best swordsman in the East Blue in the past 2 months. Johnny swallowed and pushed up his sunglasses with shaking arms. Yozaku, who had a pair of dead fish eyes, also had a horrified expression on his face. Of course, but such a big shot would actually come to Dia Harbor. However, if they go that route, that's within Arlong's sphere of influence, right? Are the two strongest pirates in the East Blue going to war? What are you looking at? Suddenly, a figure with short green hair and 3 knives on his waist appeared behind the two men. He put his hands on their shoulders and squeezed in between them. Zoro? Johnny got goosebumps all over his body. Seeing Yozaku about to speak, he directly covered Yozaku's mouth, turned to Zoro, and said, "Nothing. We are looking at the scenery, looking at the scenery." Johnny quickly winked at Yozaku, who understood instantly. While saying, "That's a close call." In his heart, he couldn't help but look up at Zoro and feel a headache. If this person really knew the movements of White Knight Gawain, he would probably rush to challenge him at the first opportunity. But he was a pirate with a bounty of 85 million, a tough guy who broke the East Blue bounty cap twice in 2 months. This kind of person would be powerful even in the Grand Line. To challenge him directly is to seek death. Really? Zoro looked at the two of them suspiciously. Of course, it's true. How about this? I'll buy you a drink. It's a deal. Yozaku looked at Zoro with a painful expression, but compared with life, all this was nothing. Chapter 51, Lies Kokoyasi Village. Nami rowed a small boat towards the shore, carrying a box in her hand. All the treasure stolen from Gawain's ship had been converted into cash by her, no more, no less, a full 120 million belly. All here, this is her only hope of redeeming the village. As long as I have these things, I will be able to redeem the village. Gawain and others' faces flashed through Nami's mind. She paused slightly but took another step forward the next moment. Walking through the village, there was no one around, even the street vendors had disappeared. It was the same place as she remembered. The difference was that the eyes that were supposed to be everywhere and focused on her completely disappeared this time. Everyone. Of course, Nami understood that not only the site had disappeared, but also those people. She felt a sense of uneasiness in her heart for no reason. Nami subconsciously quickened her pace and ran towards the mitten grove at the edge of the village. Nojiko was already waiting here. Looking at Nami, who had returned, Nojiko's expression suddenly turned cold. "What are you doing back here?" Nami was slightly stunned, then smiled and picked up the box in her hand. "Nojiko, I have collected enough money to redeem the village." Nojiko pursed her lips tightly. "You can't redeem it." "How could that be? I've been with Arlong for the past few years, and he has never broken his promise regarding money." Nami was full of confidence and had hope on her face, but the more she did so, the more pain Nojiko felt in her heart. "So, his agreement with you was to bring the money to him, right? But what if you can't bring the money to him?" Nami's pupils shrank. She remembered the treasure she had lost before. It's not that she didn't doubt her own judgment. After all, how could Karina know where her hometown was and where she hid the treasure? But if it wasn't Karina, then who could it be? The answer is almost obvious. Nojiko spoke for Nami. From the beginning, he never thought of letting you redeem the village. All of this was just his game. Watching you go from hope to despair time and time again, and then giving you hope again, in order to satisfy his own perverted desires. He knows every penny you hide. It's hopeless, Nami. I have prepared a boat for you in the Mekong Grove. Take the money and go now. Why don't you live somewhere else? There won't be villagers like us who treat you badly, right? Nami shook her head stubbornly. Where's everyone? Where's Genzo? Nojiko was indifferent and subconsciously lowered her head to avoid Nami's sight. Nami immediately realized where her uneasiness came from and subconsciously asked, they went to look for Arlong? They'll die. In desperation, Nami turned around hurriedly, but Nojiko held her shoulder down the next moment. Bang! A red slap mark fell on Nami's face. Nojiko retracted her hand and said almost in a roar, how long will you be so naive? This is a decision everyone made together. Rather than being a burden to you forever, they would rather die at Arlong's hands. You, in the middle of her speech, Nojiko's voice suddenly stopped. At this moment, tears welled up in Nami's eyes, and she murmured like she did when she was a child, I can't leave anymore now. After saying that, Nami broke free from Nojiko's restraints, turned around, and ran towards Arlong's territory while still tightly holding the suitcase that she regarded as hope. She firmly believes it. As long as the money can be brought to Arlong, no matter how bad that man is, he will keep his promise. At the same time, in Arlong Park. At the front door, Genzo held a rusty flintlock rifle in his hand and carefully checked whether it could fire normally. This was the weapon that he had secretly hidden when Arlong first came to Kokoyasi village. It had been in disrepair for many years, and many of its internal parts were rusted. Behind him was a group of villagers holding farm tools and sticks. The crowd walked towards Arlong Park in a menacing manner. Hateful. What kind of life has Nami led all these years? That child carried all of our hopes, but in the end, it was all a lie. Arlong never thought about fulfilling his promise from the beginning to the end. I can endure all his mistreatment towards us, but I can't endure him trampling on Nami's hope like this. Fortunately, all the misfortunes of that child will end today. Without us, she should be able to live a good life. After all, we are just a group of people who treat her badly. Damn fishmen. From time to time, suppressed angry voices were heard from the crowd. Some people's hands were shaking because of their instinctive fear of the fishmen, some were staggering and feeling uneasy, and some were even afraid of death and looked around warily. But no one backed down. Genzo walked in front of the crowd with his head lowered, listening to their discussions with mixed feelings. If Nami could hear these voices, she would be very happy. Unfortunately, she can't hear them and won't be able to hear them. The woman who always made dirty jokes to him suddenly appeared in front of his eyes again. If there were no Arlong pirates, he should still have a chance, right? As Genzo thought about this, a blush appeared on his face, just like it did back then. Belmir, you have a very good daughter. A gust of wind blew. The windmill above Genzo's head was humming. The complicated emotions in his mind suddenly subsided, and he looked up into the distance. They have arrived at Arlong Park. Arlong. The two fishmen at the gate with drooping eyelids raised their heads and saw the menacing scene before them. A flash of surprise flashed across their eyes, and then all turned into sarcasm. It seems that these humans still have some courage, but in the face of absolute power, what is the point of resistance? Do you understand the consequences of doing this? Everyone will die. The fishman named Shiaki slowly stood up. With a height of over 2.5 meters, he looked like a giant to the group of civilians. Not to mention that the natural physique of the fishmen is several times or even dozens of times stronger than that of humans. When the difference in innate endowments is reflected in reality, it gives off the natural sense of oppression of predators. With just a glance from Shiaki, the legs of several people went limp. But in the next moment, they were helped up by their companions. They came here with no intention of going back alive. What else is there to fear when you can even give up your life? Genzo raised a gun in his hand with a cold face and shouted, I want to see Arlong. As he said that, Genzo pulled the trigger. When the flintlock spewed out a bullet, the anger that Genzo had accumulated over the years also shot towards the fishmen in the distance along with the bullet. Chapter 52, What are you going to do to my navigator? When Nami arrived at Arlong Park, the battle was already over. The door is open. At a glance, she can see Arlong sitting in the center of the park. The three major cadres, Chu, Kurubi, Hachan, and dozens of fishmen, all gathered inside the gate, looking at Nami outside with interest. At the doorway were countless villagers wailing in pain, and the blood almost dyed the entire ground red. Everyone was seriously injured and had lost the strength to resist, but they were still breathing their last breath. Nami raised her head, and her pupils suddenly shrank. The unconscious Genzo was nailed to the door by a spear, and blood was flowing slowly along the wound on his abdomen and left shoulder. Snap. Nami. Arlong's hideous laughter brought Nami back to her senses. She raised her head and looked at Arlong, trying her best to put on a relaxed smile, but the anger and hatred in her eyes could not be concealed. I got the money back. According to the agreement, the 100 million belly will be used to redeem the village. Certainly. Arlong nodded, with even more mockery in his eyes. Then, according to the agreement, send the money to Arlong Park and deliver it to me. Nami pursed her lips tightly, took a step forward, and was about to step into Arlong Park, but a gunshot suddenly stopped her movements. Bang! Nami turned around blankly. Then she saw the fishmen, Shiaki, guarding the door, holding a rusty flintlock with white smoke coming out of the muzzle. In the distance, a civilian's head was pierced by a bullet, and blood flowed from the wound, spreading all over the ground in a scarlet color. Ah! That guy named Genzo has a good gun. Even though it hasn't been maintained for a few years, its performance is surprisingly reliable. Click. The bullet was reloaded. Shiaki looked at Nami with a playful look on his face. Hey! Nami, go quickly and realize your dream and obsession. Isn't this what you have been enduring for all these years? Nami gripped the handle of the suitcase so tightly that she didn't even notice her nails piercing her palms and bleeding. This is not what you promised, Arlong. She couldn't have imagined that the other party would be so despicable. This game of saving money to redeem the village was just entertainment for the other party from beginning to end. All her hopes and expectations have become a joke at this moment. Shay ha 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 ha. Arlong's grim laughter was heard from the park. What's wrong, Nami? Isn't this what you've always wanted? As long as you step through that door, you can save everyone in Kokoyasi village. Certainly. A village without any living people is still a village, right? Looking at the girl's tightly pursed lips in the distance, Arlong felt that the resentment that had been pent up in his heart for many years was completely vented at this moment. Then he slowly stood up and walked towards Nami, who was motionless at the door. Then, as he had done before, he grabbed Nami's hair and said coldly, "Your only value is to draw sea charts for me day and night and do everything to help me dominate the East Blue, the Grand Line, and even the whole world. This is the meaning of your existence as an inferior race. Hey." Arlong leaned over and spoke into Nami's ear, "Let's make a deal. This money will be used to buy the lives of those present, except for the guy named Genzo above. His shot seriously injured my compatriots." Shiaki cooperated and rubbed his chest. "It's a big red patch." Nami listened to Arlong's familiar words, but she only felt cold. What about the people who aren't here? They will be safe, only those who resist me will have no choice but to die. Arlong laughed grimly, then snatched the suitcase from Nami's hand and pressed her against the wall. "Now. What do you choose?" Nami was in a state of confusion and was about to speak instinctively, but a cold voice suddenly came to her ears. "What are you going to do to my navigator?" Arlong turned around and saw a silver-white flying slash coming at him and subconsciously blocked it with the suitcase in his hand. Whoosh! The flying slash cut the suitcase in half and, with the remaining force, sent Arlong flying dozens of meters into the pool in the park. Countless money was scattered all over the sky. Nami was in the middle of it, stunned for a moment, and when she reacted, she turned around and saw three familiar figures. Captain Lancelot. "How did you find this place?" "Arlong is a monster. Whether it's swords, poisons, guns, or cannons, they can't hurt him. You will only lose your lives in vain if you come here." Gawain did not reply but took off his shawl and put it on Nami while suppressing his anger. "You just need to tell me. Do you want to kill him?" Nami pursed her lips. "I think about it every day, every hour, every moment. There is not a single second that I don't think about it. But I don't want you to die. Leave now. Thinking is enough." Gawain patted Nami's shoulder, glanced around, and realized what had happened. His expression became even colder. "Jin. Kuro. It's time to move your body." Kuro's cat claw slowly came out of its sheath, the sharp blade flashing with cold light, and Jin's tonfa spun rapidly, even causing a whirlwind around them. Seeing what happened to Nami, they both got really angry and responded coldly. "Understood, Captain." After saying that, Jin and Kuro attacked at the same time and engaged in a head-on battle, with the fishmen attacking from a distance. The cat claws and the tonfa instantly caused a bloody storm. The moment the two sides came into contact, several fishmen were knocked away by Jin's tonfa, smashing the wall in the distance. The fishman named Shiaki received special attention. Before he could even raise his gun, his head was blown up by Jin's iron ball. Kuro directly started the pussyfoot maneuver, transformed into the invisible god of death, and left scratches deep enough to see the bone on the fishman's body. Except for the three cadres, the fishmen can still rely on their racial talents to deal with ordinary people, but if they encounter a tough guy, they can only suffer. In today's East Blue, Kuro and Jin, who have awakened their observation haki, are absolutely tough opponents. Even Hachin, Chu, and Kurubi are no match for Jin and Kuro. As soon as they met, they were suppressed. "Captain Lancelot, What are you doing? The one-sided battle on the field stunned Nami for a moment. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Arlong rushing out of the pool in the distance like a sharp sword and landing lightly on the ground. Arlong reached out and touched the bleeding scar on his chest, then a grim smile appeared on his face. That hurt me a little bit. Then he looked at Nami with an indescribable sarcasm in his tone. Nami, this guy is not Lancelot. You lie to people all day long, and now you are also deceived by others.